You've carried a lot today, perhaps even more than you realized. Right now, you might feel your shoulders aching gently, a faint heaviness behind your eyes, and your thoughts still quietly humming in the background. It's natural to feel this way after giving your energy and attention to the demands of your life. You don't need to carry it all anymore, at least not tonight. Find a comfortable place, wherever you are. Maybe you're settling into your bed or resting in your favorite chair. Allow yourself to take a deep, slow breath. Let the tension ease a little as you release the breath again. There's nothing left you need to solve or figure out tonight. This moment belongs entirely to you. In the quiet space you've created, you're gently joined by Marcus Aurelius, a voice of thoughtful calmness from centuries past. He won't lecture or overwhelm you with complicated ideas. Instead, imagine he's sitting close by, a peaceful presence who knows exactly what it's like to be tired after a long day, carrying heavy burdens. His words are thoughtful reminders that the worries and stresses of the day don't need to follow you into your rest. Marcus Aurelius spent many of his evenings quietly reflecting, just as you might be doing now. He wrote slowly, simply, and compassionately, not to impress anyone, but to gently calm his own restless mind. His thoughts are warm reminders that you don't need to hold on tightly to every worry or problem. There's strength in allowing yourself to rest. There's wisdom in knowing when to lay down the day's cares. Tonight, you are exactly where you need to be. Allow Marcus Aurelius's quiet wisdom to accompany you gently into relaxation. His words can softly guide you, help you let go, and reassure you that it's perfectly all right to rest. You deserve this moment of peacefulness. Let your mind drift gently, knowing you're safe, you're understood, and that tonight you can finally let yourself truly rest. The mind often struggles to recognize when it has done enough. As the day draws to a close, thoughts tend to linger, replaying what has already passed or reaching forward into tomorrow, uncertain if today's efforts were sufficient. Marcus Aurelius understood this gentle battle within the human spirit, the quiet insistence that we must always do more. Yet, he wisely reminded himself, and anyone who might listen, that there is deep wisdom in knowing when the day's work is truly done. In Marcus Aurelius's reflections, the idea emerges again and again that each person is only responsible for a limited share of effort. His writings speak clearly, yet compassionately. There is dignity and grace in accepting our limits. We were never meant to carry every burden or solve every puzzle that life presents us in a single day. To think otherwise is to misunderstand the nature of life itself. Life unfolds in its own time, and each day offers exactly as much as one can reasonably manage. Marcus gently urged himself to remember that no person, not even an emperor, could accomplish all things at all times. This quiet reminder holds profound comfort. When evening comes, it is enough simply to acknowledge that we have given what we could. Imperfection and unfinished tasks do not mean failure or inadequacy. They mean simply that the day has ended, and our natural rhythm calls for rest. Marcus Aurelius found peace in recognizing the boundary between effort and rest. To honor that boundary was to respect oneself deeply, to trust that there will always be tomorrow, that our strength returns more fully after we allow ourselves to pause. There is also a deeper layer to this reflection. Marcus believed strongly in living according to nature, aligning himself with life's natural rhythms, rather than fighting against them. Just as the sun rises and sets each day without forcing itself to shine longer, humans too must accept that rest and renewal are natural necessities. The philosopher knew that when we push beyond our natural capacity, we don't gain more. Instead, we diminish ourselves, losing touch with peace and clarity. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself of the importance of internal quiet. He frequently wrote of the importance of gently releasing expectations, allowing the mind to become still, and trusting that what remains undone will find resolution in its own way and its own time. This was not about passivity, but rather about cultivating deep inner trust. He taught himself to understand that striving endlessly creates unnecessary tension, while a quiet acceptance of limits provides genuine calm. Imagine Marcus, at the end of a long day, perhaps alone in his chamber, allowing himself the freedom of recognizing that he had done all he could. The pressures of leading an empire, the complexities of human interactions, and the ceaseless demands of duty were always waiting. Yet he deliberately chose to release them at day's end, allowing himself to breathe deeply and to enter into the quiet solitude that recharged his spirit. By embracing this gentle philosophy, he provided a blueprint for rest. Not a rest burdened by guilt or anxiety, but a true release into tranquility. This simple yet powerful idea can bring solace to any heart weary from the day's demands. Marcus Aurelius's wisdom teaches us not to define ourselves solely by productivity or achievement, but rather by our ability to respect our own humanity. It is an act of kindness toward oneself to say, "For today, my work is done." This kindness creates space for peace, reflection, and renewal, reinforcing a healthy and balanced life. Yet modern life often obscures this ancient wisdom. There is a constant pressure to achieve, to fill every moment, to feel productive, even when the day is fading. Marcus Aurelius's reflections gently challenge this impulse. He encourages the tired mind to pause, reflect softly, and recognize the value of stillness. In these quiet moments, when the demands of the day begin to recede, it becomes clear that rest itself is productive. It restores the soul and renews the body, preparing us gently for whatever comes next. Marcus Aurelius understood intimately that it is our thoughts that often resist this rest. Our minds create illusions of unfinished business, worries about things beyond our control, or regret for what we might have handled differently. He gently reminded himself, and thus reminds us, that such worries serve no purpose once the day has closed. It is wise, he believed, to release these thoughts with compassion and understanding, recognizing their transient nature and letting them drift away. Marcus did not suggest ignoring the cares of the day. Rather, he advocated recognizing them clearly, and then gently putting them aside. There is strength and maturity in acknowledging one's limits and in allowing oneself the space and permission to rest. He saw clearly that resting was not simply about ceasing activity. It was about creating an internal environment free from unnecessary pressures and burdens. This ability to let go, to accept the end of effort for one day, is quietly powerful. Marcus Aurelius knew deeply that peace was always within reach if he simply allowed himself to embrace it. His reflections offer a gentle reminder that the tiredness we feel at day's end is natural and good. It signals that we have lived fully and honestly, and that rest now awaits us as a gentle reward for our efforts. Marcus's wisdom reminds us that we honor ourselves by allowing space for rest and renewal. The world's noise can wait. The countless tasks and demands will always return with tomorrow's sunrise. Tonight, you have permission to let those things wait. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Marcus understood that true contentment is not found in endless striving, but rather in the quiet acceptance of one's own efforts. When we softly acknowledge that our day's work is complete, we offer ourselves a gift, a space to breathe, to be quiet, and to regain our inner balance. Marcus Aurelius's reflections invite us to gently trust in our own rhythm and to recognize that rest is as essential as the day's activity. This gentle trust brings deep comfort, making it easier to let go of whatever still seems unfinished or unresolved. When the mind tries to cling to unfinished tasks or nagging concerns, Marcus Aurelius gently reminds us that we have done enough. His wisdom speaks softly, encouraging a release into restful silence. He invites us to remember that our worth is not measured by how tirelessly we strive, but by how kindly we treat ourselves at the close of each day. It is in those quiet moments of letting go that true peace begins. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Marcus Aurelius's reflections quietly assure us that peace is always waiting when we are ready to accept it. It lies just beyond the day's cares, accessible in the quiet acceptance of our natural limits. Tonight, rest comes not as an obligation, but as a gentle invitation to lay down our burdens. Marcus reminds us softly, yet clearly, that the day's labors are finished, our efforts are sufficient, and it is now time to grant ourselves the simple gift of rest. Long after the noise of the day begins to fade, the thoughts often remain. They turn over the same concerns, revisit the same moments, search restlessly for clarity that refuses to come. Even in stillness, the mind keeps moving. This is something Marcus Aurelius understood deeply. He knew how easily thoughts can become tangled, how the mind can quietly wear itself down with repetition and worry. But he also knew something else, something quietly empowering. That we may not always control what happens outside of us, but we do have a say in what we allow to live inside our minds. Marcus reminded himself, often and with care, that the soul becomes dyed with the colour of its thoughts. For him, this wasn't just a saying, it was a way to navigate the long demands of each day. In moments of frustration, anxiety, or regret, he would write to himself that the power to return to calm always existed within. He didn't expect the world to be gentle, but he trained himself to meet it with gentleness, starting with his own thoughts. He knew how easily a single judgment could disturb the mind. If he felt insulted, his reflection would ask, did the insult harm your character or only your pride? If he felt overwhelmed by a task, was the task truly impossible or only unpleasant? If he felt fear about the future, was the fear rooted in fact or in assumption? These questions weren't just philosophical exercises. They were reminders that our inner landscape is shaped not by what happens around us, but by how we choose to think about it. This lesson offers something soft and steady to rest upon. The outside world may be uncertain, but your thoughts, those are yours. You decide whether a passing comment stays with you. You decide if an unfinished task becomes a weight or a simple note for tomorrow. You choose whether to replay a mistake again and again, or to treat it as a moment of learning that's already behind you. It's not always easy, but it is always possible. Even now, as you lie here and settle in, your thoughts may try to pull you in many directions. They may remind you of something you forgot, something you said, something you fear. But you don't have to follow them. You can let them pass without inviting them to stay. You can gently say to yourself, "Not tonight." Marcus did this too. In his own quiet moments, he recognized the value of stepping back from unhelpful thoughts, not with force or judgment, but with calm understanding. He believed that thoughts are like impressions on the mind, brief visitors that only take root if we welcome them. Some bring clarity, others bring noise. Part of wisdom, he felt, was in learning to tell the difference. And once you know which thoughts bring peace, you can choose to rest in them instead of the others. You can return to calm again and again, not by changing the world, but by changing the way you see it. To Marcus, the most important thing was to keep the mind clear, steady, and kind. Not naive, not passive, but grounded in what matters. He wrote that our lives are what our thoughts make them. And when the thoughts become too heavy or harsh, we can pause and gently reshape them. Not by arguing with reality, but by accepting it and focusing on what remains within our reach. Our responses, our attitudes, our inner stillness. Even in the chaos of empire, he returned to this idea over and over, that he could be calm even when others were not, that he could be just even when faced with injustice, that he could think clearly even when circumstances were clouded, because his mind was his own. And within that space, he could always choose peace. This brings a quiet kind of freedom. You are not bound to the thoughts that rush in uninvited. You are not defined by a single mistake, a stressful moment, or a harsh voice from earlier in the day. These things pass. And what stays is the stillness you return to over and over again by gently choosing where your mind rests. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Let yourself be free from the thoughts that don't serve you. You don't have to silence them. You only have to stop feeding them. They will drift away on their own when you no longer give them weight. Let them pass like clouds across a quiet sky. You are not the clouds. You are the sky that holds them. There's comfort in remembering that you have that power. Not the power to control every outcome or predict every event, but the quieter power to shape your own inner atmosphere. To decide, even in small moments, how you want to think, how you want to feel, and how you want to respond. Marcus knew that the world could be sharp, unpredictable, even cruel. But he also knew that he didn't need to carry the cruelty inside him. He could observe what happened, understand it clearly, and still choose thoughts that made him lighter, steadier, and more at peace. And this is something you can do too. Not perfectly, not all at once, but gently, patiently, one thought at a time. If a thought tonight tells you that you're not enough, or that you should have done more, know that it isn't telling the whole story. You have done what you could today. That's enough. You're here now in this quiet moment, and you're allowed to rest. You don't have to solve anything right now. You don't have to fix what's already past. You only have to be here, with yourself, and let your thoughts grow quieter. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Marcus Aurelius believed that the soul becomes calm when it withdraws into itself, even for just a moment. That kind of withdrawal is not retreat, it's restoration. A simple return to the part of you that remains untouched by the day's demands. That part of you is always there, waiting beneath the noise, ready to welcome you back. So tonight, let your thoughts settle, let them soften. Choose the ones that feel gentle, the ones that help you feel safe. Let go of the ones that press too hard. There's no need to follow them. There's no need to resist them. Just rest in the quiet awareness that you can shape your thoughts with patience, and that in doing so, you shape the peace you feel. You control your thoughts. And that means you can choose calm. You can choose rest. And tonight, you are allowed to choose both. Some things are simply not up to us. The weather, other people's choices, sudden changes in plans, delays, illnesses, misunderstandings. Marcus Aurelius lived in a world filled with unpredictability, where even an emperor couldn't control most of what happened, and instead of fighting that truth, he chose to accept it. Again and again, in quiet reflections written only for himself, he reminded his own mind, focus only on what belongs to you. Let go of what does not. This wasn't resignation, it was clarity. He saw that so much of human suffering comes not from the events themselves, but from our refusal to accept them, from our attempts to bend things that were never in our hands. When a storm rolled in, he didn't waste time hoping the sun would come back out. He looked inward instead. His question wasn't, "Why is this happening?" but, "How can I respond to this with strength and calm?" This idea, so simple and steady, can gently ease the mind at the end of a long day. There are likely moments still lingering in your thoughts right now, conversations you wish had gone differently, outcomes you hoped for that didn't come to pass, little irritations that stuck with you longer than they should have. It's easy to carry those things into the night. But Marcus Aurelius invites you to loosen your grip. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. He would remind himself that we are disturbed not by things, but by our opinions about them. And while the external world may shift beyond our reach, the way we see it, that part stays with us. When something felt unjust, he would calmly ask, "Can I change this?" And if the answer was no, he didn't give his peace away to it. He would breathe, pause, and move on with what was still within his power. Not because it was easy, but because it was wise. Letting go is not about giving up. It's about recognizing that there is a difference between what we influence and what we can only witness. Marcus understood that the more we try to control the uncontrollable, the more we suffer. The more we resist what is already happening, the more tangled our thoughts become. And at the end of the day, when our energy is low and our mind needs rest, those tangled thoughts weigh even more. So he made a habit of setting them down. He trained his mind gently but persistently. Each time it clung to a frustration, he would guide it back, softly, without force. He knew this was a daily practice, letting go, accepting limits, returning to himself. He would write reminders like, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Strength, for Marcus, did not mean control. It meant serenity. The calm that comes from knowing you've done what you could, and nothing more is needed. He didn't demand certainty. He welcomed unpredictability as a part of life, not a flaw in it. And from that mindset, he was able to find rest, even in the middle of difficulty. Letting go is not a grand act. It's a quiet decision, repeated often, a gentle choice to stop replaying something that cannot be changed, a soft exhale after holding your breath too long. You're not failing by not fixing everything. You are human. And part of being human is learning to be at peace with what you cannot steer. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Even now, as you rest, your mind might drift back to something unfinished, unresolved. that's okay. You don't have to fight those thoughts. You only have to acknowledge them and let them pass through. You don't need to invite them in. You don't need to argue with them. Let them come. Let them go. Like a breeze moving through an open window. Marcus practiced this quietly, consistently. He returned to it like a rhythm, a form of inner discipline that brought comfort. He reminded himself that whatever others said, whatever events unfolded, he still had his own response. And his response could be calm. It could be quiet. It could be kind, even when the world around him was not. He saw how the desire for control could pull people away from peace, how frustration often grew from wishing the world would behave differently. But the world doesn't always make sense. People don't always act fairly. Plans don't always succeed. And that's not a reason to give up. It's a reason to look inward, to find steadiness in yourself instead of chasing it in the world. This gentle wisdom can settle into the quiet of your evening. It can wrap around you like a warm blanket, reminding you that you're allowed to rest now, that whatever today held, you aren't bound to carry it into tomorrow. Some things are simply not yours to carry. You've done your part. You've faced what came. And now you can set the rest down. Marcus Aurelius believed that peace is always available, not in the absence of challenge, but in the clarity of what is and isn't yours to change. He didn't promise a life without difficulty. He promised that you could meet difficulty without losing yourself. And that begins by gently letting go of what lies beyond your reach. Even now, you might feel your mind beginning to slow. The worries that felt urgent earlier might not feel so sharp. The edges soften when you stop resisting them. When you let go, not with force, but with understanding. Tonight, you don't need to fix anything. You don't need to solve every problem. You don't need to wrestle with what's already happened or what might come next. What's done is done. What's out of your hands can be left there. You are here, safe, quiet, steady, and that is enough. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means allowing. It means resting in the truth that some things will unfold without your effort, and that your peace doesn't depend on the outcome. It depends on your willingness to return to yourself again and again. So let go. Let the day dissolve behind you. Let your mind come home to stillness. You've done enough. You've thought enough. You've carried enough. Now it's time to rest. Peace doesn't arrive all at once. It doesn't depend on silence or perfect surroundings or the absence of stress. It begins more quietly than that, often unnoticed, shaped gently by the way we think. Marcus Aurelius returned to this truth again and again. The soul, he wrote, becomes dyed with the colour of its thoughts. In his own life, filled with noise, responsibility, and unpredictability, he learned to find peace, not by changing the world, but by choosing which thoughts to hold. He understood that the mind reflects what we feed it. If we dwell on irritation, we grow tense. If we dwell on fear, we grow restless. But if we return, with care, to calm and honest thinking, something begins to shift. Not all at once, but steadily. A tired mind begins to settle. A restless heart softens. This wasn't theory for Marcus. It was a daily practice. He knew that a peaceful life begins with peaceful thinking. Even in the quiet of night, thoughts can drift toward things that stir up discomfort. A conversation that didn't go well, a task left unfinished, a worry about tomorrow. These thoughts may seem small, but they carry weight. If left unattended, they tighten the mind. They press against your rest. Marcus Aurelius learned to watch these thoughts gently and to decide which ones deserved his attention. He would ask himself, is this thought helping me or hurting me? Is it based in truth or just habit? These questions guided him not toward judgment, but toward clarity. He didn't try to force positivity. He simply chose honesty, simplicity, and calm. And through that, peace followed. This kind of clarity is possible for anyone. Your mind is not a passive space where thoughts come and go without meaning. It's a space you shape, over time, with care. The thoughts you return to, those are the ones that take root. If you return again and again to fear, to comparison, to frustration, they will shape your experience. But if you begin, even gently, to choose steadier thoughts, thoughts of acceptance, of patience, of gratitude, you create a different atmosphere inside yourself. You don't need to force anything. You don't need to quiet your mind completely. You only need to notice which thoughts invite calm and which ones don't. You have that choice. And in that choice, there is peace. Marcus Aurelius wasn't chasing happiness or a perfect life. He sought steadiness. He believed that inner peace came from thinking in a way that honored reality, but didn't overreact to it. He reminded himself that the things outside his control had no power to shape his peace unless he let them. His thoughts could interpret events with calm or with anxiety, and whichever path he chose would determine his experience, not the events themselves. This is something we often forget, that a single moment can unfold in many different ways, depending on how we meet it in our minds. A delay can feel like an irritation or an unexpected pause. A mistake can feel like a failure or simply something human. A quiet night can feel lonely or restful. The event does not determine the feeling. The thought does. You don't have to pretend things are better than they are. Marcus never asked that of himself. He simply encouraged himself to see clearly and to respond kindly, to avoid adding unnecessary weight, to speak to himself, even in his own thoughts, with calm reason rather than panic or blame. Over time, this became a way of life. And it can become a way of life for you too. Right now, if your thoughts are jumping from one worry to the next, you don't need to fight them. You don't need to chase them away. You can simply pause and notice. Notice which ones serve you and which ones drain you. And then, with a quiet breath, return to the ones that help you rest. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Marcus knew that life would always contain uncertainty, but he believed peace could exist within that uncertainty, not because everything was resolved, but because the mind had learned how to settle, and when the mind settles, everything softens. He found comfort in simple thoughts, in reminders that we are here now, in this moment, that the past has passed, that the future hasn't arrived, that this moment, this breath, is enough. These thoughts became his shelter, not complicated philosophies, but grounded, steady truths, the kind you can return to again and again when everything else feels unsteady. At the end of a long day, it can be tempting to go over everything again in your head, to analyze what went wrong, what could have been said differently, what still needs to be done. Marcus would have understood that urge, but he would also remind himself that there is a time to think and a time to rest, and rest begins by choosing thoughts that calm, not stir. So let your thoughts move slowly now. Let them come gently, without pressure. If a thought brings peace, hold it. If it doesn't, let it pass. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who observes them. You are the one who decides what stays. This is your space. This is your mind. And with each quiet decision, you shape it. Not perfectly, not instantly, but patiently. One thought at a time. Tonight, Marcus Aurelius would ask you to be kind to your mind, to treat it like something fragile, like something worth caring for. He would tell you that peace isn't found by escaping your thoughts, but by choosing them with care. He would say, softly, that your thoughts create the world you live in, and that by shaping them, you shape your peace. You don't have to get it right. You only have to be gentle. You only have to return to yourself. Again and again. And tonight, you're allowed to rest. Marcus Aurelius lived in a world that rarely paused. As emperor, he faced wars, politics, betrayals, and the pressure of responsibility that never fully lifted. He didn't wait for the world to quiet down before seeking peace. He couldn't. Instead, he learned how to create that peace from within. Again and again, in his writings, he reminded himself to retreat into the stillness of his own mind, not to escape reality, but to meet it from a place of calm. He once wrote that nowhere can a person find a more peaceful retreat than into their own soul. That space inside, untouched by noise, untouched by circumstance, is always available. But it takes practice to return there. It takes gentleness. The world outside is loud and uncertain, but that doesn't mean your inner life has to follow its rhythm. The world might be unsettled. People might be rushing, speaking, reacting. Still, you can be steady. Stillness isn't about stopping movement. It's about quieting reactivity. Marcus knew that even while life pressed forward with urgency, he could choose not to rush. Even when others spoke with harshness, he could choose not to respond in kind. His stillness was a choice, renewed each day, a quiet discipline that allowed him to meet the noise without becoming it. This stillness becomes even more important at the end of the day. When your body slows down, but your mind continues racing, thoughts can pick up speed without warning, going over what someone said, what you didn't finish, what might happen tomorrow. In these moments, Marcus's words offer a quiet path forward. Be like the rock against which the waves break, and it stands still. This wasn't about being cold or unfeeling. It was about grounding yourself in something deeper than your surroundings. He understood that you can't control how others behave, or how events unfold. But you can shape the way you respond, and in that response, there is peace. Even now, you may feel tension left over from the day, a disagreement that lingered, a plan that didn't work out, a moment that caught you off guard. These are the waves. They come and go, but you don't have to move with every one of them. You can stay right where you are. You can allow the world to continue moving while you settle into your own rhythm. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Marcus believed that part of our suffering comes from trying to control what doesn't belong to us. When we expect stillness from the world, we're often disappointed. But when we find it within ourselves, we're free. The world may be restless, but you don't have to be. You can watch the restlessness, acknowledge it, and still choose calm. This calm isn't something distant or unreachable. It's already within you, beneath the thoughts and the noise. You've touched it before, perhaps in moments when you let go without even realizing. In a deep breath, in a quiet moment when nothing needed to happen. In the way your shoulders relax when you finally stop trying to solve everything. That's the space Marcus is guiding you back to. Not with effort, but with awareness. Stillness doesn't mean ignoring what matters. It means facing it from a place of steadiness, rather than urgency. Marcus Aurelius understood that action is often more effective when it begins in stillness. He didn't advocate passivity. He believed in responsibility, in courage, in doing what needed to be done. But he also knew that frantic energy clouds the mind, while inner quiet makes space for clarity. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. There will always be noise somewhere. Voices, opinions, pressures, movement. But inside you, there can be something quieter. A space where you are no longer reacting, no longer pulled by every thought or feeling. Just here, resting in your own presence. This is the retreat Marcus returned to, not just at night, but throughout his life. It's not about shutting the world out. It's about letting it pass, without letting it take over. You don't have to get caught in every ripple of thought. You don't have to follow every feeling. You can simply notice them, let them rise, let them fall, and return gently, quietly, to your still point. Even in the face of challenges, Marcus reminded himself, you have power over your mind. The stillness he cultivated wasn't something he found once and kept forever. It was something he practiced over and over in the middle of difficulty. His calm didn't come from a perfect life. It came from within. And it stayed with him, even when everything around him changed. You have that same capacity. It doesn't matter how noisy the day was. It doesn't matter how much remains uncertain. What matters is this moment, this breath, this space inside you that doesn't need to rush, doesn't need to decide anything right now. It only needs to rest. Let your body soften. Let your thoughts slow. Let the world continue on its own. It doesn't need you right now, but you need your own stillness. The outside world is not yours to control, but your response is, your breath is, your attention is. You can choose to be steady, even when the day was scattered. You can choose to be soft, even when others were sharp. You can choose to return again and again to the part of yourself that is untouched by the day's noise. Marcus would tell you, stillness is not a place. It's a way of being, and you carry it with you no matter where you are. Even now, as you rest, it's waiting within you. You don't need to earn it. You don't need to fix anything first. It's already here. Tonight, the world may still be turning. Messages might still be coming in. Somewhere, someone is still speaking. But not here. Not now. You're allowed to pause. You're allowed to be still, even if the world isn't. And in that stillness, you'll find something soft, something safe, your own peace. Time never pauses. It moves gently, but without hesitation, flowing past us whether we notice it or not. Marcus Aurelius thought about this often, not to feel rushed, but to feel grounded in what matters. He reminded himself that life is brief, and that each moment, once gone, does not return. And yet, he didn't see this as a cause for anxiety. He saw it as an invitation to live with presence and calm, to cherish each passing moment, and to let go of the ones already gone. He would often write, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do and say and think. These words were not meant to frighten him, but to bring him back to the present, to help him remember that time is never guaranteed, that whatever burdens he carried, they too would pass, that even the heaviest thoughts are temporary, and that peace can be found in knowing how little time asks of us, only that we use it gently and with awareness. This reflection becomes even more meaningful at the end of the day. When you lie down, the hours behind you already fading, it's natural to wonder if you used them well. But Marcus wouldn't have encouraged you to judge yourself harshly. He would have reminded you that even if today didn't go as planned, even if it felt too fast or too full, it's still part of the rhythm of a life. It belongs to you, as all your days do, even the quiet, imperfect ones. Time moves with or without your permission. It doesn't wait for readiness or perfection. Marcus learned not to try to hold on to it, but to meet it as it arrived, fully awake to the present moment. He understood that trying to stretch time or slow it down only leads to frustration. It's better, he believed, to flow with it, to let each hour come, offer what it does, and move on. And in that gentle rhythm, peace becomes easier to find. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. You don't have to go back and fix the hours that already passed. You don't need to relive the parts you wish had gone differently. They are already part of the past, folded into the flow of time. You are here now, breathing, resting, and that's enough. Marcus Aurelius would have reminded himself, and you, that there is no moment more real than the one in front of you. He noticed how often people waste time worrying about the future or clinging to what's already over. But life, he wrote, is only ever lived in this moment, not in yesterday, not in what might happen tomorrow. Just here. And if you can be present here, without rushing, without reaching, you can find rest. Time doesn't ask you to do more. It asks you to be here, to witness this moment with clarity, and to let the past go, without regret. Marcus practiced this as a way to stay calm in the face of change. He would observe how quickly everything fades, emotions, problems, even people's opinions. What seems urgent today often becomes small with distance, so he learned to step back and watch things settle, to avoid letting passing concerns disturb his peace. He accepted that time would take everything eventually, not with despair, but with understanding. He saw that if everything is temporary, then no frustration needs to last, and no moment needs to be wasted on what doesn't matter. He didn't ignore difficulty. He simply refused to let it steal time that could be spent in stillness or quiet joy. This way of thinking brings comfort. You don't have to rush to make every moment perfect. You only have to be present for it. You only have to recognize that this time is yours, and that how you meet it, calmly, gently, with awareness, is what gives it meaning. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Time will move with or without your permission. It will carry you forward even as you rest. But how you move within it is still yours to shape. You can meet the passage of time with resistance, or with ease, with regret, or with acceptance. Marcus chose ease. He chose acceptance. And he found peace not by trying to stop time, but by walking beside it. He knew that when you stop fighting the passage of time, it begins to feel softer. You stop chasing more. You stop clinging to what's already past. You begin to let each moment come and go like a breath. And in that rhythm, there's space for rest. So let the day be finished now. Whatever it held, it's over. Let time carry it away. You're not behind. You're not late. You're not missing anything. You're right here, where you're meant to be, in the quiet space between one day and the next. Marcus Aurelius would have encouraged this stillness, not because time is short in a fearful way, but because its brevity makes it more precious. He believed that understanding time's limits helps us use it wisely, not by filling it with constant effort, but by meeting it with presence and care. Even now, as the night deepens, time continues its gentle movement. But you don't need to keep moving with it. You can pause. You can rest. Let it pass around you for now, without pulling you along. There is nothing urgent here, nothing unfinished that needs your attention tonight. The hour is late. Your body is ready to slow down, and your mind can follow. Let this moment be simple. Let it be quiet. The rest of time will wait. But right now, you are safe, you are still, and you are free to let go. Marcus Aurelius carried the weight of an empire. Each day brought decisions that affected thousands of lives, laws to consider, battles to prepare for, people to lead, and countless unknowns waiting beyond the horizon. His days were full of responsibility, often marked by tension and fatigue. And yet, despite this constant weight, he still found time, quiet moments late at night or in the early hours, to turn inward, to write, to reflect, to rest. He understood something most forget, that even emperors need time to pause. He didn't see rest as weakness. He saw it as necessary. Even for someone at the top of the world, there were limits. The body could only do so much. The mind could only carry so many thoughts. And the spirit, however steady, needed space to breathe. So Marcus allowed himself those moments of stillness, not as indulgence, but as part of a life lived thoughtfully. He reminded himself that effort was noble, but so was renewal. This understanding becomes especially gentle when you consider how often we push ourselves. Maybe the tasks aren't as grand as running an empire, but the pressure can still feel heavy. The feeling of needing to do more, be more, achieve more. It's familiar to nearly everyone. But Marcus would have told you, softly and without judgment, that it's okay to stop for a while. That even the most disciplined minds, the strongest shoulders, need rest. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. He believed in duty, in service, in facing challenges directly. But he also knew that exhaustion clouds the mind, that without rest, reason fades and emotion takes over. So when he found himself weary, he didn't ignore it. He acknowledged it. He met it with calm, not resistance. He gave himself permission to step back, to let the world continue moving for a moment without him. Marcus understood that life was not a race to be won, but a path to be walked with awareness, and part of that awareness was recognizing the need for balance, effort and ease, action and stillness, work and sleep. One without the other becomes unsustainable. So he learned to return to himself in quiet moments, to let go of the noise, and to simply rest. Even now, as you settle in, your mind might still be busy, replaying the day, thinking about what needs to happen next, wondering if you've done enough. That's natural. The mind tries to stay in motion, especially after long days. But you don't have to follow every thought. You can choose to slow down. You can remind yourself, gently, that even the wisest, most disciplined people have limits. And those limits are not flaws. They're part of being human. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Marcus never expected himself to be invincible. He knew that to live well, he had to rest well. He allowed space in his day not just for action, but for recovery. Not just for problem solving, but for silence. And in that silence, he found something valuable. He found clarity, a chance to listen inward, without interruption. His reflections weren't rushed. They were slow, deliberate, sometimes repetitive. Not because he didn't understand the lessons, but because he needed to remind himself of them. Each time he returned to the page, it was an act of gentle care, a way of settling himself before returning to the demands of his world. And each time he rested, he became a little more grounded, a little more capable of facing what came next. Even emperors need rest, not as an escape, but as a return to the self before the title, the person before the responsibility, the quiet before the storm. You are no different. You may not carry the fate of an empire, but you carry your own burdens, your own decisions, expectations, and doubts. And just like Marcus, you deserve to set them down for a while, not forever, just for now. Long enough to breathe, long enough to let your shoulders drop, long enough to feel what it's like to simply exist without pressure. Marcus wrote, "If you seek tranquility, do loss, not out of laziness, but with focus, with intention. To do less not just in action, but in thought. To allow space between moments. To create a life that isn't overflowing with motion, but full of meaning. This is the rest he gave himself, and it's the rest you're allowed to take. Even now, your body is winding down, your breath has likely slowed, your thoughts are beginning to soften. That's not a mistake or a distraction, that's the beginning of renewal. That's your mind returning to balance. Marcus wouldn't have asked you to push through it. He would have told you to trust it, to listen, to let yourself rest without guilt. Because the strength you need tomorrow depends on the rest you allow tonight. So pause here. Let your mind grow quiet. Let your body sink deeper into stillness. The world can wait. Your responsibilities can wait. This moment is only for you. Let it be simple. Let it be quiet. You've done enough. Even emperors need rest, and so do you. Marcus Aurelius lived in a world that was often loud, not just with sound, but with opinions, decisions, and distractions. The palace halls were full of voices, each one asking for something. The streets of Rome buzzed with life, with trade and movement and endless demands. And yet, within all of that, he came to understand something few people truly grasp, that silence is sacred. Not the kind of silence that comes from being alone in a quiet room, but the kind that lives inside, even when everything around you keeps moving. Marcus returned to that silence often. He didn't seek it out of avoidance. He sought it because it gave him strength. In silence, the mind settles. The heart softens. Judgment becomes clearer. And from that stillness, he could meet the world more calmly. He wrote about retreating into himself, not to escape his responsibilities, but to renew his ability to face them. He believed there was a part of the mind that remains untouched by the chaos outside, a place where no one else can reach, a place where we are free from noise, free from pressure, free from everything we can't control. He didn't treat this inner space as something mysterious. It was practical, necessary, a place to return to again and again. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Marcus found that most distress comes from external things we carry into our minds. What someone said, what we think they meant, what might happen next. These things fill the silence quickly, if we let them. But he learned to protect his peace by pausing, before reacting, before speaking, before letting someone else's noise become his own. That quiet space between action and reaction, that's where he found clarity. He saw silence not as emptiness, but as fullness, a space that allows thoughts to slow down, emotions to settle, and perspective to return. In silence, you can hear what really matters. Not the loudest voice, not the sharpest thought, but the steady truth underneath it all. Marcus didn't always get there immediately, but he practiced, and in that practice he found peace. Even now, as you listen, your thoughts may still be moving. That's okay. You don't need to quiet them all at once. You only need to notice the space between them. That space, however small, is silence. And in that silence, you can rest. Not because the world has become silent, but because you have allowed yourself to listen more deeply. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Silence doesn't ask anything from you. It doesn't expect productivity. It doesn't measure your worth. It simply welcomes you. Marcus believed that returning to silence, even for a moment, was one of the most powerful things a person could do. It meant stepping back from judgment. It meant letting go of urgency. It meant being fully present without needing to do or say anything. This kind of silence isn't about withdrawing from life. It's about participating in it more fully, with less noise, with less confusion. Marcus saw that when he allowed silence to shape his thoughts, his actions became more deliberate. His words became fewer, but wiser. He didn't need to say everything he thought. He didn't need to chase every reaction. In silence, he found a quieter kind of strength. He understood that most words are unnecessary. Most opinions aren't helpful. Most worries dissolve when left unspoken. He didn't demand silence from others, but he practiced it within himself. He didn't rush to explain, defend, or prove. He sat with his own thoughts. He trusted that what was important would rise to the surface naturally, without force. This trust in silence is something you can return to too, when your mind feels crowded, when your body feels tired, when the day has left you overstimulated or overwhelmed. You can come back to that quiet space inside. You can let your thoughts come and go without needing to respond to all of them. You can sit with the stillness, not as a pause before the next thing, but as the thing itself. Even emperors needed that space. Even leaders who held armies in their hands paused to listen to their own breath. Marcus knew that when we forget silence, we lose ourselves, but when we return to it, we remember what's steady, what's clear, what's lasting. So let yourself slow down now. Let the pressure of speech, of answers, of explanations fall away. There's nothing you need to say tonight. No one you need to impress. The world can continue on without your attention, just for now. In this moment, all that matters is this gentle quiet you are stepping into. Marcus would remind you that silence is not something to be filled. It is something to be honored, protected, allowed. Because in that silence, the deepest parts of you begin to rest. Let your breath move gently. Let your thoughts drift without judgment. Let the silence wrap around you, not like a barrier, but like a soft place to land. You've heard enough for one day. You've spoken enough, thought enough. It's time now to let yourself be still, to let everything else go. This silence you're feeling, it's not empty. It's where your peace begins. Emotions can feel overwhelming. They rise quickly, sometimes without warning, and take up space in the mind and body. Sadness, frustration, anxiety, even joy. Each one arrives with its own shape and rhythm. Some feel heavy, others feel sharp, and often they seem to define us in the moment. But Marcus Aurelius learned to see them differently. He came to understand that emotions are not the self. They are experiences, temporary, passing, sometimes strong, but never permanent. He wrote often about watching the mind, observing it without being carried away. He saw that emotions are natural responses, not flaws. But he also saw that giving them too much control leads to imbalance. He reminded himself that feelings can cloud reason if we let them linger too long or mistake them for truth. So he practiced noticing them, acknowledging their presence, without confusing them with who he was. This quiet distinction brought him peace. He didn't deny what he felt. He didn't pretend to be unaffected by pain or pressure. But he also didn't allow those passing feelings to dictate his actions or his sense of identity. If he felt anger, he would reflect on it. If he felt fear, he would explore what it was tied to. If he felt sadness, he would let it pass through, always with the same steady understanding. This is not me. This is a passing state. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Whatever you felt today, whether it stayed with you or faded quickly, it doesn't define you. If something frustrated you, that frustration isn't who you are. If something made you feel unsteady, it doesn't mean you are unsteady. Emotions are signals, not definitions. They rise with circumstance and fade with time. And between those changes, your deeper self remains unchanged. Marcus believed that reason and reflection give us space to pause, to step back from the first reaction. He encouraged himself to look at emotions as impressions, not commands, something to consider, not something to obey. When he felt pulled by a strong feeling, he would stop and ask, is this true? Is this useful? Is this mine to act on? And in doing that, he gave himself a moment of quiet distance, a moment where he could choose. That ability to choose, to respond rather than react, is where peace lives. You are not powerless in the face of emotion. You don't have to push feelings away or pretend they aren't there. You can simply notice them. Let them come. Let them go. Let them be part of your experience, not the center of it. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Even now, as you begin to rest, some emotions might still linger. The edges of stress, a lingering worry, a sense of guilt or regret. These are common visitors at the end of the day. The mind often waits until things are quiet to show you what you haven't fully processed. But you don't have to fix anything tonight. You don't need to resist what you're feeling. You only need to make space for it, without being consumed. Marcus practiced that often. He allowed space between himself and his emotions. He would remind himself that he was more than the sum of his reactions, that just because he felt something didn't mean he needed to follow it. This wasn't detachment. It was clarity, a deep understanding that he could feel and still remain calm, that he could observe and still be kind, that he could rest even with emotion present. And so can you, even if something is still unresolved, even if you feel unsettled. You can return to the simple truth that emotions are waves, and you're the ocean underneath. They rise and fall, they stir and pass. But your depth remains. You are not your anxiety. You are not your anger. You are not your sadness. These are only moments, only movements. You, underneath it all, are steady, capable of observing, of breathing, of letting go. Marcus found strength in reminding himself of this. He knew he couldn't control what emotions arrived, but he could control what stayed, what took root, and that awareness gave him peace. Tonight, give yourself the same gift. Don't rush to resolve every feeling. Don't try to reshape the day through thought. Let yourself be still with whatever is here. Let emotions drift in and out like passing weather. They don't define the night. They don't define you. They are simply part of being alive. Breathe gently. Rest your body. let your mind slow. Nothing more is needed right now. You are not your emotions. You are the one who sees them, and then chooses to rest. Modern life tends to pull people forward. The pace of each day often feels fast. Appointments to meet, tasks to complete, decisions to make quickly. It's easy to fall into a rhythm of reacting instead of choosing. Marcus Aurelius felt this pressure too. Even in ancient Rome, the world around him was full of movement, full of urgency. But he learned to slow down inside. He reminded himself that a life worth living is not one driven by urgency, but by intention. Urgency often comes from fear, a fear of being late, missing out, falling behind. But intention grows from clarity. It begins with a simple question. What is truly important? Marcus returned to that question again and again, not to plan his life perfectly, but to stay grounded in what mattered. He didn't want to be swept up in noise. He wanted to be steady in purpose. Even when the world rushed, he practiced moving with care. He wrote that if something is in your control, approach it directly and with honesty. And if it isn't, let it pass. That kind of discipline isn't frantic, it's deliberate. It asks that each action, each word, each moment be chosen, not just done out of habit or pressure. He believed that when you move with intention, your life becomes simpler, not because the world becomes easier, but because your choices begin to align with what you value. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. You don't need to hurry anymore, not tonight. There's nowhere else you need to be, no task left that can't wait. This moment is not for rushing, it's for resting. And rest becomes deeper when it follows intention, when you allow yourself to choose peace instead of chasing more. Marcus saw how urgency drained the mind, how rushing through life often left people feeling empty. They would reach the end of the day without remembering how they spent it. So he made a habit of pausing, before speaking, before acting, before allowing his emotions to take over. He practiced presence, a quiet kind of awareness that asked, is this necessary? Is this wise? That practice can soften the end of the day. Maybe there were moments today where you felt pulled too quickly. Maybe you said yes when you meant no, or rushed past something you wanted to notice. That's all right. There's no need to go back and fix it. But you can begin again now. You can let the urgency fall away, and in its place, invite something slower, something more intentional. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. There's a calm that comes from knowing your actions are your own, not just reactions to pressure. Marcus Aurelius believed that even small choices could be meaningful when made with awareness. A conversation, a kind gesture, a moment of quiet thought. These didn't have to be dramatic to be powerful. They simply needed to be chosen. Intention doesn't mean control. It doesn't mean planning everything. It means being awake to your choices and moving through life with clarity. It means saying, this matters, instead of, I'm just keeping up. And when you live that way, even rest becomes more nourishing. It's no longer a pause between busy moments. It becomes something valuable in itself. Tonight, allow yourself to return to that space. A slower rhythm, a simpler pace. You don't need to measure the day by how much got done. You don't need to organize tomorrow before you've had a chance to rest. Let this time be quiet. Let it be enough. Marcus reminded himself that what matters most often gets overlooked when we rush. He didn't want to miss the beauty of a moment, the lesson in a challenge, or the quiet truth of his own thoughts. So he slowed down, not because he had to, but because he chose to. and in that choice, he found peace. That same peace is available to you. It doesn't require a perfect day. It only asks that you stop long enough to listen, long enough to feel what matters, long enough to remember that your life is not a race, and your worth is not measured by your speed. There is no urgency here. There is only the soft unfolding of time, and you are allowed to rest inside it. Let your breath move slowly. Let your thoughts lose their sharpness. Let your body release the tension it gathered today. You've moved enough. You've done enough. And now, in this quiet space, you can simply be. Intention begins with awareness, and right now, your awareness is here, with your breath, with your calm, with the quiet presence of a night that needs nothing from you. Marcus Aurelius would have reminded you that the truest moments are often the quietest, not the ones filled with noise, but the ones filled with attention. So let yourself be here, fully, without rushing to the next thing. This is your time, not to plan, not to fix, just to rest, gently, intentionally, completely. The mind has a way of reaching forward. It imagines what might go wrong, plays out difficult conversations that haven't happened, and turns tomorrow's uncertainties into tonight's worries. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He watched his own mind do the same, even as an emperor. But he also reminded himself, again and again, not to suffer over things that hadn't yet happened. He knew how easy it is to turn imagined troubles into real distress. He would pause and write, "Today I escaped from anxiety." Or no, I discarded it, because it was within me, in my own perceptions. The situations that troubled him weren't always real. They were thoughts, projections, expectations, fears about what might come. So he learned to separate what was happening from what he was imagining. That simple act created space. And in that space, peace had room to grow. So much of what weighs on the heart doesn't belong to the present moment. It's the mind wandering ahead, anticipating problems, bracing for outcomes, carrying futures that haven't arrived. But Marcus gently returned himself to what was real. He reminded himself that many of the things he feared would never happen, and even if they did, they would not unfold the way he imagined. He learned to meet life as it came, not as he feared it might. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. You may have felt it today too, that quiet unease that creeps in when you start imagining everything that could go wrong. Maybe you caught yourself trying to plan every step ahead, or worrying about how someone might react, or preparing for difficulties that never came. That kind of thinking doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. But you don't have to stay in it. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Marcus believed that the present moment is almost always manageable. It's the imagined future that becomes overwhelming. When we fear what hasn't happened, we double our burden. We carry both the now and the possibility of something worse. But the future is only a thought. It doesn't exist yet. And if it comes, it will be different than you expect. Marcus reminded himself to deal with things when they arrived, not before. He didn't ignore preparation, he didn't avoid responsibility, but he also didn't see the value in worrying about what might happen. His reflections helped him stay grounded in what was, not what could be. He trained himself to respond to the moment in front of him, not the one his mind invented. You can do the same. Right now, as you lie here, thoughts might still be reaching out toward tomorrow, toward next week, toward something uncertain that's been hanging in the back of your mind. But you're not there. You're here, And this moment doesn't need to be carried into the future. It can just be a place to rest. When Marcus felt the pull of worry, he didn't fight it. He acknowledged it. He noticed the story his mind was telling, and then he gently questioned it. Is this happening right now? Is this useful? Can I do anything about it? These weren't dramatic questions, just small, quiet ways of returning to the present, of letting go of imagined pain. And he found that most of the time, once he returned, the weight lifted. Not all at once, not completely, but enough. Enough to breathe, enough to act wisely, enough to rest. You're allowed to let go of the stories your mind is spinning. You don't have to rehearse every possible outcome. You don't need to solve tomorrow's problems tonight. If something needs your attention later, you'll meet it when it arrives. And when you do, you'll be more prepared because you've allowed yourself to rest now. Marcus often reminded himself that our lives are shaped by what we pay attention to. When the mind is full of imagined fears, we begin to live inside them. But when we shift our attention to what's real, what's in front of us, life becomes quieter, more manageable, less urgent. He chose to let go of unnecessary suffering. He chose to trust that when the time came, he would meet it with the strength he had, and not a moment sooner. Let yourself do the same. Right now, your body is growing still. Your breath is slower. Your thoughts are beginning to soften. There's no crisis here, no decision to make, no future to carry, just this moment, just the quiet, just the gentle return to what's real. And what's real is that you are safe. You are allowed to rest. The imagined troubles can wait, or disappear entirely. They are only thoughts, and thoughts don't define your reality unless you invite them in. Tonight, let them pass. Marcus would have told you that peace is found not by controlling the future, but by releasing the need to, by trusting yourself to face life as it comes, rather than fearing it in advance. So let your mind settle now. Let your thoughts grow quiet. Let the imagined future dissolve and return to what is here. You are not meant to carry what hasn't happened. Let yourself be free. Let yourself be still. Let yourself sleep. Marcus Aurelius believed in effort, in showing up to meet each day with discipline, calm, and reason. But he also knew that even the strongest mind grows weary, that clarity fades when the body is tired, and that sometimes the best way to think more clearly is to stop thinking for a while. Sleep, to Marcus, wasn't laziness or escape. It was a natural reset, something the mind and body both needed in order to begin again with steadiness and perspective. He understood that no matter how thoughtful or disciplined a person might be, fatigue eventually clouds judgment. Emotions become sharper. Patience shortens. The mind spins more easily into unnecessary worry. It becomes harder to tell which thoughts are meaningful and which are simply noise. So he didn't resist the need for rest. He accepted it. He respected it. And he allowed himself to step back when his energy began to fade. He didn't expect himself to solve everything before sleeping. In fact, he often reminded himself that many problems seem lighter after a good rest. He wrote that people should intervene in their own thoughts, especially when they begin to spiral. But he also knew that sometimes the kindest and wisest intervention is simply sleep. A full breath, a quiet night, a clean slate in the morning. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Right now, your mind may still be trying to finish something, sorting through today, preparing for tomorrow, holding on to one more thought, as if solving it now will bring peace faster. But Marcus would have told you gently, let it wait. Rest will do more for your mind than one more hour of thinking ever could. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Just as a shaken glass of water becomes clear when it's left still, the mind begins to clear when it's allowed to rest. Sleep softens the edges. It quiets unnecessary fears. It organizes what feels scattered, and it helps you see again, not with urgency, but with calm. Marcus recognized that clarity is not forced. It arises naturally when the mind is rested and the body is restored. He would reflect on the limits of his own thinking, not with frustration, but with honesty. There were times when reasoning no longer helped, when he felt pulled into confusion, fatigue, or emotion, and he would step away. He saw sleep not as stepping down, but as preparing to return with greater strength. He trusted that rest would bring him back to himself. You can trust that too. Whatever feels tangled now doesn't need to be unraveled tonight. Whatever question remains unanswered can wait. Sleep is not avoidance. It's recovery. The problems that follow you into the evening are not yours to fix in this moment. The mind will do its work when it's rested. The answers will be easier to see when the fog has lifted. Marcus understood the rhythm of life, effort and rest, action and reflection. He practiced stepping back just as he practiced showing up. And he believed that letting the body rest is not a weakness, but a choice made in wisdom. A person who respects their own limits becomes stronger in the long run. Sleep, then, is part of philosophy. It's part of reason. It's part of living well. And it begins with letting go, with loosening the grip on the day, with giving yourself permission to be still without needing to prove anything. There is no reward tonight for staying awake with your worries. There is only the peace that comes from release. Marcus would have reminded himself that nature doesn't rush, that everything unfolds in time, including clarity, including understanding, including peace. And none of it can arrive fully if the mind is too tired to see clearly. He learned to step aside and let sleep do what thought could not. Let yourself do the same now. Let your breath become slower. Let your thoughts move more gently. Let your mind begin to float, free from the weight of needing to figure anything out. You've carried enough today. You've tried. You've thought. And now you can rest in the knowledge that you've done what you could. Tomorrow your mind will be clearer. You'll see things differently, more calmly. But you don't have to reach for that clarity now. Just allow the space for it to return. Sleep clears the mind, not with effort, but with softness, not by thinking more, but by letting go. And now you can let go, slowly, fully, quietly. You are safe here, and it's time to rest. Marcus Aurelius expected a great deal of himself. He believed in discipline, reason, and virtue. But he also understood that harshness, especially toward oneself, rarely leads to true wisdom. He knew that a mind burdened by blame cannot find peace, that self-criticism, if left unchecked, doesn't build strength, it erodes it. So while he pushed himself to live with purpose, he also reminded himself, gently and often, to be patient with his own humanity. He made mistakes. He felt frustration. He struggled with doubt. But instead of turning against himself, he chose to reflect with kindness. When his mind wandered, he brought it back. When he failed to live by his principles, he acknowledged it and began again. Without anger, without shame, with calm persistence and quiet care. That kind of kindness is not weakness, it is steadiness. Marcus understood that treating yourself with compassion allows you to improve, not out of guilt or punishment, but from a place of peace. He never asked himself to be perfect. He only asked himself to return, again and again, to try, to learn, and to move forward without harsh judgment. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. You may be carrying something heavy tonight, a moment you wish had gone differently, a word you wish you hadn't said, a task you didn't finish. It's easy to replay those things in your mind, as if doing so might somehow fix them. But Marcus would have urged you to pause, to breathe, to remember that no one, no matter how wise or well-meaning, lives without flaw. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. He knew that progress isn't found in criticizing every misstep. It's found in returning to yourself with calm, with honesty, and with care. If you've tried your best, that's enough. If you haven't, there's still room to begin again. Either way, you deserve your own kindness. Marcus often wrote as if he was speaking to a younger, more uncertain version of himself. His words were firm, but never cruel. He gave himself structure, but also space. He knew that self-respect means speaking to yourself with dignity, not with indulgence, not with judgment, but with the same tone you might use to encourage a friend who's struggling. And maybe that's what you need most right now. Not another goal or plan or promise, but a quiet reminder that it's okay to rest. It's okay to feel tired. It's okay to be human. Marcus would not have scolded you for your thoughts. He would have reminded you that they don't define you, that your worth isn't measured by your productivity or your ability to meet every expectation. He believed that inner peace is built through self-awareness, yes, but also through self-forgiveness. When he felt frustration rising, he didn't fuel it. He stepped back. When he felt regret, he examined it gently, then let it pass. He didn't confuse reflection with punishment. He chose to grow without tearing himself down in the process. That's the kind of strength he valued. Calm, consistent, forgiving. And that's the kind of strength you can offer yourself now. Whatever today held, you are still worthy of rest. Whatever fell short, you are still allowed to feel peace. You don't need to fix yourself before you can be kind to yourself. Kindness is not something you earn. It's something you return to. It's something that lives within you, even when you forget it's there. Let it rise again now. Let your breath move gently. Let your thoughts become softer. Let your inner voice speak more kindly. Marcus knew that each day brings its own trials, but he also knew that each night brings its own invitation to return to stillness, to rest, and to begin again when you're ready. And so, tonight, you can let go of the weight of self-judgment. You can leave it behind. You've done what you could, and that's enough for now. Treat yourself as someone worthy of rest, of forgiveness, of care, because you are. Sleep now, knowing that you are not defined by your struggles, but by the way you return to yourself, again and again, with kindness. Marcus Aurelius knew what it meant to feel exhausted. His days were long, often filled with conflict, uncertainty, and the quiet weight of decisions no one else could make for him. He understood the kind of tiredness that goes beyond the body, a weariness that settles into the mind, that makes patience thinner, thoughts slower, and goodness harder to reach. And still, he reminded himself that virtue doesn't depend on comfort. He believed that even when you're tired, perhaps especially then, you can still choose to be good, not perfect, not energetic, not endlessly generous, just good, kind when it's difficult, honest when it's inconvenient, gentle when it would be easier not to be. Marcus returned to this idea again and again. He wrote, "At every hour, give your full attention to doing what is right, with unselfishness and love." He didn't expect himself to always succeed, but he did expect himself to keep trying, even when his strength felt limited. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Tiredness can change how things feel. A small frustration might feel heavier. A quiet request might sound louder. The patience you usually offer easily may feel out of reach. Marcus understood that, and he never blamed himself for being human. But he also didn't let tiredness become an excuse to act against his own values. He believed that goodness is not something you perform only when it's easy. It's something you carry quietly, even when no one is watching, even when you don't feel at your best. That kind of goodness is not dramatic. It's not loud or self-congratulatory. It's steady. It shows up in small choices. The way you respond instead of react. The way you pause instead of push. The way you hold back from saying something sharp when you're too tired to be patient, but choose not to say it anyway. These are the moments Marcus wrote about, not as burdens, but as quiet victories. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. He knew that some days don't go as planned. Some days bring frustration or sadness. Some days you do your best and still fall short. But he believed that you are never so tired that you can't offer a little patience, a little clarity, a little care, not for the sake of achievement, but for the sake of peace. He found that when he stayed close to his values, even in difficult moments, he could rest more easily. There was no guilt to untangle, no regret to carry into sleep. And now, as your body slows down, you might still be carrying the weight of a few moments from today. Maybe you snapped at someone. Maybe you held in more than you meant to. Maybe you were quiet when you wanted to speak. Whatever it was, it's already past. You are here now. You can choose to set it down. Not to forget it, but to let it soften, to see it with gentleness, and to return to the steady center of who you are. Marcus often reminded himself to return to the path, not with force, but with quiet consistency, no matter how the day had gone, no matter how tired he was. He believed that every action, no matter how small, carried weight, and that doing what is right, even when you're worn down, builds something lasting, not for the world to see, but for your own peace of mind. Even goodness can be quiet. A kind thought, a calm word, a decision to rest instead of argue, a breath taken before reacting. These are the forms goodness takes when you're tired, and they're enough. Let your breath move gently now. Let your thoughts slow down. Whatever tension remains, let it be met with patience, not pressure. You don't have to get everything right. You only have to keep returning to what matters. Over time, that becomes strength. That becomes peace. Marcus didn't expect himself to be more than human. He only asked himself not to drift too far from his own values, even when everything else felt heavy. So tonight, rest. Not just because you're tired, but because you've chosen to stay close to what's important, even when it wasn't easy. You've shown up in the way you could. And that's enough. Be gentle with yourself now. Let go of the idea that virtue has to look like perfection. Let go of the thought that being tired means you've failed. You've done well. You are allowed to rest. And in that rest, you'll find the strength to return again, to goodness, to calm, to the quiet self that never really left. Marcus Aurelius faced more than most. Disease, war, betrayal, the constant strain of leadership. He knew what it meant to be tested by life. And yet, even in the quiet moments when the pressure settled into his bones, he reminded himself of something simple and steady. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That strength, he believed, was not about never feeling fear or pain. It was about surviving them, meeting them, moving through them, and continuing on. He didn't expect life to be gentle, but he trusted in the part of himself that endured. When things felt uncertain, when setbacks arrived without warning, he returned to one quiet truth. He had made it through everything so far, not without scars, not without hardship, but he was still standing, still thinking, still breathing, and that meant he could go on. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. It's easy to forget what you've already survived, the difficult days you didn't think would end, the disappointments that felt sharp at the time but softened with distance, the fears that took up so much space in your thoughts, only to fade quietly when they passed. All of it, moments that once seemed too heavy, are now behind you. And Marcus would have reminded you of that, not to dismiss what you've been through, but to help you remember your own strength. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. He believed in returning to what was real, what you can touch, what you can see clearly. And in doing that, he saw how often the mind creates extra suffering by replaying the past or fearing the future. But when he focused on the present, on the fact that he was still here, still breathing, still capable of choosing his next step, something in him quieted. The storm didn't disappear, but he no longer felt lost inside it. This was how he carried himself through hard days, not by pretending to be invincible, but by remembering that everything hard had already been met, one moment at a time. That was enough. That was always enough. You've done the same, whether or not you've noticed. You've walked through things that once felt impossible. You've handled change, confusion, loss, uncertainty. Maybe not perfectly, but steadily enough to reach this moment. Whatever's been asked of you, you've answered in the way you could. And you're still here, still thinking, still breathing, still becoming. Marcus saw life as something that unfolds slowly. You don't always notice your own strength while you're using it. You don't feel brave while you're just trying to survive. But later, often in quiet moments like this, you begin to see it more clearly. That you kept going. That you stayed honest. That you kept choosing to return to yourself, even when things were hard. He knew the mind often focuses on what's unfinished, what's missing, what hasn't been fixed. But he also knew that peace lives in seeing what you've already done. He reminded himself to pause and reflect, not with pride, but with understanding. Because when you can see how much you've endured, it becomes easier to rest. Rest becomes a kind of gratitude, a way of saying, I've made it this far. I don't need to fight tonight. I can let myself recover. Even now, if your thoughts are still spinning, still looking for answers, you can remind yourself gently. You don't have to figure everything out. You've already proven something more important, that you can face what comes, that you can carry your thoughts, your emotions, your fears, and still keep going. Let that be enough tonight. Let your breath slow. Let your shoulders drop. Let your mind remember how far you've come. Marcus would have encouraged that quiet reflection, not dramatic celebration, not self-congratulation, just a soft return to the truth. You are still here. That means something. That deserves rest. You don't have to worry about tomorrow yet. You'll meet it with the same strength you've always had, the same resilience you've already shown. But tonight is not about preparing for what's next. It's about noticing what already is. The calm after the struggle, the stillness after the noise. Let yourself feel it. Let yourself settle into it. There is no pressure here, no demand, just this quiet knowing, deep and steady, that you have faced every moment so far, and you're still becoming the kind of person who can meet the next one. That's what Marcus believed. That the strength we need isn't found in certainty or control. It's found in simply continuing, in showing up, in breathing through the hard parts and resting in between. And now, it's your time to rest. You've done more than enough. Sleep peacefully, knowing that you've survived everything so far, and you always will. Marcus Aurelius learned not to fight the world as it was. He lived in a time of unrest, of disease, of political complexity and human frailty. There were losses he couldn't stop, changes he couldn't predict, people he couldn't influence, no matter how calmly or wisely he spoke. And so, instead of resisting every twist of fate, he chose something quieter: acceptance. Not as surrender, but as understanding, as a way of softening the struggle that comes from wishing reality were different. He reminded himself that everything is part of a greater order, that life unfolds whether or not we agree with its timing, and the more we resist, the heavier it becomes. He wrote, "Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny, for what could more aptly fit your needs?" These words weren't meant to romanticize suffering. They were meant to create space between him and his reflex to resist, to help him meet what came with steadiness rather than tension. He saw clearly that peace comes not from control, but from alignment. Not from forcing life into your plans, but from meeting it as it is, and acting wisely from there. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Sometimes what arrives in life is not what you wanted. Plans change. People let you down. Something you counted on doesn't unfold the way you hoped. In those moments, it's easy to tighten, to question everything, to resist. But Marcus would have told you, gently, that resisting what is won't change it, that peace begins the moment you stop trying to undo what has already happened. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. He practiced welcoming things, not because he enjoyed every experience, but because he understood their place. Even pain, even loss, even delay. Each moment was part of the world's unfolding, and his role was not to dictate it, but to move through it with presence, to accept what he could not control and focus on his response. This kind of acceptance doesn't mean you like everything. It doesn't mean you agree with what life brings. It only means you stop resisting it long enough to see it clearly. You stop trying to rewrite what already is. And in that quiet surrender, something softens. The mind becomes calmer. The heart stops racing. And suddenly, you're no longer in a fight. You're in a flow. Marcus saw this in the patterns of nature, in the turning of seasons, in the way each moment leads to the next. He reminded himself to be like that, to live like a tree, firmly rooted, but flexible, able to withstand change without falling apart. When something didn't go his way, he didn't take it as punishment. He took it as a part of being alive. And now, in this quiet moment, as your day comes to a close, you may feel yourself still carrying resistance. A conversation that didn't go the way you wanted. An answer you didn't get. a disappointment you didn't expect. But you don't need to carry that tension any further. You can set it down, not to forget it, just to stop fighting it. This moment is already here. Whatever today brought, it's done, and you're allowed to meet it now with softness. To say, this happened, I accept it, and I am still here. Marcus Aurelius returned to that mindset again and again, not as a one-time choice, but as a daily habit. Acceptance was not passive for him. It was active, a decision to remain calm, to keep thinking clearly, to meet life with the kind of grace that only comes when you're not fighting the current. Let yourself feel that now. Breathe slowly. Let your shoulders relax. Let your thoughts settle into the rhythm of the present moment. What has happened is already part of your story, and there is wisdom in allowing it to be there. Without judgment, without resistance, you can move forward without needing to rewrite what's behind you. Marcus believed that everything life brings is an opportunity to grow in virtue, in patience, in understanding. He didn't mean that every experience was pleasant, only that it was usable, that even what hurts can teach, that even what feels unfair can deepen the mind and open the heart, but only if we stop pushing it away. And so tonight, let yourself begin to accept what came today. Let the moments unfold in your memory, not as things to fix, but as things to understand. You don't need to explain them. You don't need to solve them before bed. Just let them be what they are. Let your mind return to quiet. Let your breath move freely. Let the day settle into the place it belongs, behind you. You've met life as best as you could today. You don't need to resist the way it showed up. You only need to rest in the knowledge that, like Marcus, you are learning to meet life with less struggle, with more grace, and with the quiet power that comes from accepting everything as it comes. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that the world does not require him to be everywhere at once. Even as emperor, with armies to command and cities to govern, he understood something that most people forget in the rush of daily life. That urgency is often an illusion. That the mind tricks us into believing that if we step away, even briefly, everything will unravel. But Marcus saw through that illusion. He knew the truth. The world will wait. He wrote to himself not as a ruler, but as a man learning to live wisely. He told himself that many things could be left undone without harm, that it was better to do a few things well, with care and calm, than to try to do everything at once, and do it in a state of hurry. He reminded himself, if you seek tranquility, do less. And in doing less he found something deeper, presence, clarity, and peace. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Right now, there may still be thoughts pulling at your attention, things left unfinished, messages not answered, tasks waiting for tomorrow. But Marcus would tell you that they can wait, that nothing in this moment requires your energy more than rest. The mind wants to stay in motion, even when the body is ready to be still. But you don't have to follow that momentum. You can pause. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Whatever is calling for your attention will still be there in the morning, and by then you'll meet it with a clearer mind and a rested heart. Marcus believed that stepping away is not neglect, it's wisdom. He saw that rest is not separate from life's work. It is part of it, essential to it, the soil in which clarity grows. He didn't always feel free to rest. There were demands on him, just as there are on you. But he made space anyway, space to reflect, space to breathe, Space to remember that no one can carry the world without setting it down sometimes. And in those quiet pauses, he found strength that rushing never gave him. He reminded himself that time moves forward, whether we keep up with it or not. And that true peace comes not from catching up, but from letting go. Letting go of the need to always respond. Letting go of the belief that everything must be handled now. Letting go of the pressure to be constantly available. The world will wait. You are allowed to step back. You are allowed to put your phone down, to turn the lights low, to let the lists and plans and tasks fade into the background. The day is done. And this moment does not belong to the world. It belongs to you. Marcus would have seen this moment as sacred, a quiet space where you return to yourself, where the outside world is no longer louder than your own thoughts, where you remember that you're not a machine, but a person with limits, with needs, with the right to rest. And so you can give yourself that gift now. Let your breath slow, let your muscles release. Let your mind soften its grip. Whatever needs to be done can wait. The people in your life can wait. The notifications, the tasks, the worries, they are not more important than your peace. They are not more urgent than your health. Marcus believed in showing up for others, but he also knew that no one can do that well without first showing up for themselves. He learned to pause, even in times of chaos, to walk slowly, even when the world rushed, to choose a calm response, even when his own mind tried to pull him into fear. He believed that presence is more powerful than urgency, that stillness, chosen deliberately, is not delay, but wisdom. You can rest in that wisdom now. Let your mind step away from what it thinks it must hold. Let the pressure ease. You don't need to carry everything. You never did. The world will turn while you sleep. The world will wait while you heal. And in that stillness, you'll find your way back to yourself. You've done enough for today. You've shown up in the way you could. And now, the most meaningful thing you can do is rest. The world will wait, and you are allowed to rest. Marcus Aurelius believed that peace came not from outcomes, but from effort. He lived in a world full of uncertainty, wars that couldn't be predicted, decisions that couldn't please everyone, outcomes that were never fully within his grasp. Still, he chose to act with care, to speak with honesty, to lead with integrity, and then, after doing what he could, he let go. Again and again, he reminded himself that he was only responsible for the part that was his. The rest, what would happen next, was not his to control. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That strength, he understood, came from detaching from results. Not because he didn't care, but because he knew that tying your peace to the outcome only guarantees tension. You can do everything right and still be disappointed. You can give your full effort and still not receive the response you hoped for. But if you measure your life by whether things turn out your way, you place your well-being in the hands of chance. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. It's easy to carry the weight of expectations, to wonder if something will work out, if the effort you gave will be seen or rewarded or appreciated, if the risks you took will lead to the change you hoped for. But Marcus would remind you gently, that's not where peace comes from. Peace comes from knowing you did your part with honesty, with focus, with presence, and then stepping back. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. The mind wants certainty. It wants to know that trying will lead to success, that love will be returned, that plans will unfold smoothly. But Marcus saw clearly that the world doesn't work that way. The outcomes are never guaranteed. And yet, the value of an action is not in what it brings, but in the intention behind it. That's where your control lives, in your decision to act with wisdom and clarity, regardless of what happens next. Detaching from the outcome doesn't mean you don't care. It means you don't depend. It means you free yourself from needing things to go a certain way in order to feel at peace. Marcus believed that when you stop clinging to results, you become steadier, more free, more able to respond wisely, even when life is unpredictable. He practiced doing what was right, not because it guaranteed success, but because it aligned with who he wanted to be. That was his focus, not the reward, but the action itself, not the praise, but the intention. And this brought him calm, even when things didn't go as planned. You can feel that same calm now. Let your thoughts release their grip on what's unresolved. Let go of the need for the perfect answer, the ideal result, the guaranteed tomorrow. You've already done what you could, and if you haven't, you'll get another chance. But tonight is not for grasping. Tonight is for softening. Let your body settle. Let your breath move gently. Let your thoughts drift without needing to land anywhere. Whatever happens next is not in your hands, and that's okay. Marcus knew the difference between influence and control. He knew the power of showing up with full effort, and the wisdom of stepping back when that effort was complete. He believed that serenity came from this balance, from caring deeply about the work, but releasing the need to control its end. And so, in moments when the future felt uncertain, he would remind himself, "I've done my part. Now let life do its part." You can remind yourself of that too. You are not responsible for everything. You are not defined by what unfolds after you try. You are defined by how you live, how you think, how you treat others and yourself. These are the things you can choose, and these are the things that last. Whatever is beyond your control now, let it be. Let it unfold on its own timeline. You don't need to predict it. You don't need to wrestle with it. You only need to rest in the quiet, knowing that your effort was enough, that your intention was honest, that your day is complete. Let yourself rest in that truth. You've tried. You've shown up. You've made decisions the best way you could. And now peace begins not by chasing the ending, but by releasing it. The outcome can wait. The result is not yours to carry tonight. Sleep now, not because everything is certain, but because you've chosen to let go of what you cannot hold. And that, Marcus would say, is where true rest begins. Marcus Aurelius lived in a palace, surrounded by ceremony and noise, yet he constantly returned to something quiet, something modest, simplicity. He understood that the outer world, with all its motion and complexity, could easily cloud the mind. And so, he trained himself to live clearly and deliberately, with fewer distractions and fewer demands. He saw simplicity not as a lack of ambition, but as a form of strength, a way to stay grounded when everything else felt uncertain. He wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." These words weren't meant to reduce the richness of life, but to remind himself where contentment truly lives. It doesn't come from accumulation. It doesn't come from attention or applause. It comes from a clear mind, a steady heart, and a quiet space within. And that kind of space is easier to find when life is made simple. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. There's often a pull to add more goals, more opinions, more pressure to do or be something greater. But Marcus would have reminded you, gently, that peace grows in the spaces we leave untouched, in the things we choose not to carry, in the expectations we decide not to chase. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. He found strength in trimming down what didn't matter. He wasn't concerned with showing off, or appearing powerful, or staying constantly busy. Instead, he asked himself what really mattered, and slowly he let the rest fall away. In doing that, he found clarity, and from that clarity, peace. This is the heart of simplicity. Not minimalism in the sense of having nothing, but intentional living. Choosing what you give your energy to, deciding which thoughts are worth holding, letting go of the need to be everything, to fix everything, to prove anything. Marcus believed that this kind of inner discipline brings strength, the kind that doesn't waver when the day goes differently than planned. Even now, as your body begins to slow down, your mind may still be sorting through details. Sorting, organizing, trying to make sense of the day. But you don't have to hold on to all of it. You don't need every answer right now. You don't need every loose thread tied. You can let things be simple tonight. A quiet breath, a soft bed, a gentle thought that says, "This moment is enough." Marcus didn't see strength in control or noise. He saw it in restraint, in knowing when to act and when to be still, in knowing that the most important things in life, truth, kindness, clarity, do not demand attention. They live quietly, just beneath the surface, and rise when we make room for them. He wrote often about cutting away excess, in thought, in speech, in ambition, not to become dull or unmotivated, but to remain clear, to protect what really matters from being lost in what doesn't. Let yourself feel that now, the strength to pause, the strength to need less, the strength to feel full, even in a simple, quiet moment like this one. Marcus lived in a world that encouraged constant striving, but he practiced contentment. He chose a life of inward focus, of returning to the essentials, of asking himself each day, is this necessary? And through that, he found balance. Simplicity isn't about making life smaller. It's about making it lighter. It's what allows you to walk through the day without being weighed down, to listen without reacting, to sleep without tension. Let your breath slow now. Let your body soften. Let your thoughts loosen and fade. You don't need more than this. Right now, you are safe. You are still. And that is enough. There is strength in choosing calm. There is peace in living simply. And tonight, there is nothing more to do but rest. Marcus Aurelius asked much of himself. He valued discipline, self-control, and reason. But he also understood how easily a person can become discouraged when expecting too much, too quickly. He reminded himself to be patient, not only with others, but with his own nature. Even as an emperor, he did not demand perfection from himself. He believed in steady progress, in showing up each day with calm resolve, and letting that be enough. He wrote, "Don't expect the impossible from yourself. When you fail, come back to your purpose, gently, without blame." These words weren't written for the world. They were written for himself. Quiet, honest reminders that growth isn't instant, and peace doesn't arrive through force. He knew that even the most thoughtful mind sometimes drifts. Even the strongest will sometimes weakens. And when that happened, he didn't respond with harshness. He returned to patience. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. It's easy to offer patience to others, to understand that people are tired, distracted, overwhelmed. But turning that same understanding inward is harder. When you fall short of your own expectations, when you forget, or lose focus, or act in ways that don't reflect who you want to be, it's tempting to tighten, to criticize. But Marcus would have told you gently that you owe yourself the same patience you give to those around you. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Whatever didn't go as planned today, you don't need to carry it into the night. You don't need to solve it in your mind before you can rest. All you need is a little space, a little understanding, a quiet reminder that you're still learning, still growing, still becoming who you want to be, and that process is not meant to be rushed. Marcus practiced patience as a form of strength, not passivity, not indulgence, but a calm, consistent return to what matters. When he failed to meet his own standard, he didn't give up or spiral into shame. He simply came back. Each time, a little steadier, a little wiser, and that, to him, was enough. He saw the mind as something to care for, not something to battle with. He treated his flaws not as enemies, but as parts of himself that needed guidance. And that guidance began with patience, with space to pause, with a voice that said, "It's okay. Let's begin again. You can speak to yourself that way too. If today was messy or difficult or disappointing, let it be. You've made it to this moment, and that matters. You're here now, willing to reflect, willing to slow down. And that willingness is enough. Let your breath ease. Let your body rest. Let your thoughts move without judgment." Marcus believed that to live well, you must accept what you are in this moment, not just what you hope to become. You must meet yourself with honesty, and from that honesty, offer kindness. He never confused growth with urgency. He knew that true change happens slowly, in the background, through quiet effort and the simple act of returning. So return now, not with tension, not with shame, but with patience. You are not behind, you are not broken, you are just human, moving through another day, learning as you go. Marcus understood that a calm life isn't free of mistakes. It's full of small moments where you forgive yourself and start again. He reminded himself that the path is never straight, that even with wisdom, the mind slips, the mood shifts, the heart aches, and none of that means failure. He practiced beginning again, not dramatically, not with pressure, just quietly, whenever he noticed he had drifted. You can do the same. If you've been hard on yourself today, let it soften. If you've expected more than you could give, release that weight. If you've felt disappointed in how you showed up, remember that patience is not just something you give others. It's something you deserve as well. Let yourself be here now, not as someone who needs to be fixed, but as someone who is learning to be gentle. There is strength in that. There is healing in that. And there is rest in that. Let your breath move slowly. Let your body grow heavier. Let the pressure fade, one breath at a time. Marcus would have wanted you to sleep, not as a reward, not as an escape, but as an act of kindness, because he knew that a well-rested mind is a clearer mind, and that true growth begins with rest. So sleep now, not because everything is perfect, but because you've done enough for today. You are still learning, you are still growing, and you owe yourself patience as you do. Marcus Aurelius thought often about death, not as something to fear, but as something natural. He didn't avoid the subject. He met it with a calm mind, returning to it in his writings, not to dwell on it, but to understand it. He reminded himself that death is not something separate from life. It is part of the pattern, part of the rhythm. To fear it, he believed, was to fear something that belongs to all living things, something that has always been and will always be. He wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." In that simple line, he shifted the focus away from what might come at the end and back to the present moment, to how we live, how we think, how we treat others. These are the things that shape the experience of life, and none of them are improved by fearing what comes after it. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Marcus didn't pretend that death wasn't real, but he saw that fearing it would not prevent it. Worrying about it would not delay it. Instead, he tried to understand it as he would understand any part of nature. A tree loses its leaves in autumn. A river flows into the sea. A breath rises and then falls. And life, in its own time, comes to rest. There is nothing cruel in that, nothing to run from. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. He believed that death is simply a return to the elements, a return to rest. Nothing painful, nothing to punish, just an end to motion, a dissolving into stillness. If you think of the time before your birth, he would say, and realize that it did not trouble you, then you can begin to see that the time after your death may be just as peaceful. He found comfort in remembering that everything we are is borrowed from nature, the body, the breath, the thoughts. We don't own them, we only hold them for a while. And when they return to where they came from, it's not a loss, it's a release, like handing back something that was always meant to be shared. Even now, as your mind begins to slow for the night, there may be distant thoughts of endings, of time, of what is unknown. But Marcus would gently guide your thoughts away from fear and toward trust. Trust that nature does not rush or waste. Trust that nothing ends too early or too late. Trust that rest, whether for a moment or forever, is not something to dread. He reminded himself again and again, if something is a part of nature, it cannot be bad. It may be unfamiliar. It may bring sadness to those left behind. But it is not wrong. It is not broken. It simply is. Like sleep at the end of a long day, death is the quiet return to stillness. And in that stillness, there is no pain, no worry, no pressure to keep going, just peace. You can feel some of that now. In the slowing of your breath, in the weight of your body sinking into rest, in the way your thoughts are beginning to drift, not because you are escaping, but because you are allowing yourself to let go. You are trusting that it's safe to pause. Marcus would not have told you to fear less by thinking harder. He would have told you to look at life closely, with honesty, to see how every creature that ever lived eventually came to rest, and how life somehow continues, through change, through renewal, through the quiet grace of endings that make space for beginnings. Even the stars, he reminded himself, will someday fade, and yet the sky will not be less beautiful. He believed that once we stop fearing death, we begin to live more freely, more gently. We stop wasting time on panic and begin spending it with purpose. We speak more kindly. We hold others more closely. We take fewer things for granted. You don't need to rush toward tomorrow. You don't need to cling to every hour. Let your life be full, not frantic. Let it unfold as it's meant to, without needing to control every step. Rest is not the opposite of life. It is part of life, a necessary return. So let yourself return now, to stillness, to quiet, to the soft reassurance that there is nothing to fear in what comes next. You are here, you are safe, and tonight you are allowed to rest. Marcus Aurelius believed that when we live well, honestly, gently, thoughtfully, we have no reason to fear the end, because we have already made peace with what life is, and we have learned, little by little, to trust what we cannot see. So let that trust carry you now. Let it cradle your thoughts as they drift. Let it soften whatever fears still remain. You are not meant to worry forever. You are meant to rest. And in that rest, may you find the peace Marcus knew was always waiting beneath the fear. Quiet, still, steady, like sleep, like home. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that each day is a new chance to live with clarity and calm. No matter what happened yesterday, no matter how chaotic, disappointing, or unkind, it belongs to the past now. The day ahead does not yet exist. What you have is this quiet moment in between, where something gentle begins again. He believed that renewal wasn't dramatic. It didn't require ceremony or fanfare. It was as simple as waking up and choosing to meet the day without carrying the full weight of the last one. He wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." In these words, there is no demand for perfection, only an invitation to begin again, calmly, kindly, from wherever you are. There's peace in knowing that no thought from the past must control you. No mood from hours ago needs to linger. The mind, like the body, can stretch and shift. What felt heavy can feel lighter simply by not resisting it anymore. What felt urgent can settle when it's no longer being chased. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Marcus knew that self-discipline and serenity begin not with harshness, but with steadiness. When the mind feels cluttered, it can be tempting to respond with frustration at yourself, at others, at the world, for not bending to your will. But the stoic path he walked was not about force. It was about gentle redirection, turning your thoughts from what drains you to what steadies you, from what's gone to what's still within your care. Sometimes the fresh start isn't a bright morning. Sometimes it's a quiet night, like this one, when everything slows enough for you to notice your own mind again. You may realize that some thoughts you've been carrying don't belong to you anymore. They were reactions, not decisions. Echoes, not truths. And that's all right. They've served their time. You can thank them and set them down. Marcus reminded himself that no matter how far you stray from your better nature, you are never locked out of returning to it. He believed in the power of immediate change, not grand reinventions, but small returns, choosing calm over anger, silence over impulse, patience over worry. Even if you forgot all these things for a while, the path back is never closed. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. There is comfort in repetition, not just in your habits, but in your ability to begin them again. The same way the sea returns to the shore, the same way the sun returns to the horizon, your better self is not lost, only resting. Marcus would gently nudge himself back to this truth each time he forgot. That forgetting is human, that remembering is within reach, that even emperors stumble, and still they rise the next morning to meet the day with new resolve. He often reflected on how much time is wasted on regret, when it could be used for renewal. Regret looks backward. Wisdom looks inward. And peace begins in the still space between what has passed and what has not yet come. You are in that space now. This moment does not ask anything of you. It offers only rest. And in that rest, the first step toward renewal has already begun. Marcus didn't see self-improvement as a race. He didn't imagine virtue as something to grasp and never let go of. He saw it as something to return to, again and again, no matter how far you've drifted. Even in moments of weakness or weariness, he believed it was possible to quietly reorient, to take one deep breath and find your way back to stillness. And so can you. The past does not define your worth. Your mistakes are not your character. What matters is your ability to notice, to pause, to begin again with gentleness. Not to erase what came before, but to move forward without letting it cloud what comes next. He knew that even a tired mind can be a clear one, that even when the world feels heavy, there is strength in simplicity, that starting fresh is not about being perfect, but about being present. You're allowed to begin again, without explanation, without punishment, without fear, just a quiet return to what matters, just a breath, just rest. Marcus Aurelius believed that nothing could stop a person who chose to live well, moment by moment, thought by thought. And this moment, right here, is one of those choices. So let yourself soften. Let the past unspool behind you, no longer needing to be fixed or solved. Let your thoughts slow, not because they are forced to, but because they are finally safe to do so. Tomorrow can begin clean, but so can tonight. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are already walking the path back to peace, simply by being still. Simply by allowing rest to take its place. And in that quiet, you'll find that the strength to begin again was never lost. It was waiting, calmly, for you to return. Peace isn't something Marcus Aurelius searched for in the outer world. He knew that even the most powerful man in the Roman Empire couldn't make everything go his way. Armies could be commanded, laws enforced, and cities governed. But still, the mind could feel restless, tangled in thoughts and pulled by emotions. He understood that control was an illusion. The only place peace could truly be found was within. He wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." For Marcus, this wasn't a poetic idea. It was a practice. Even in the middle of responsibility, even with the burden of empire on his shoulders, he reminded himself that stillness didn't come from resolving every conflict. It came from how he chose to respond to the world, moment by moment. So much of our tension comes from the sense that something still needs to be fixed before we can rest. A conversation that didn't go right, a task left unfinished, a future fear that hasn't arrived, but already holds space in the mind. The belief that peace comes after everything is done, that it's a reward for solving life, can keep the mind from ever slowing down. But Marcus offers a different path. Peace is not earned by control. It is found by release. It begins when the mind stops fighting with what is. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Even when there's chaos around you, your thoughts are yours to shape. Even when the world feels unsteady, your inner ground can remain calm. Marcus called this the citadel within, a place that cannot be invaded, a refuge always close, no matter the noise outside. And this doesn't mean ignoring responsibilities. It doesn't mean giving up on action. It simply means remembering that your inner calm is not dependent on results. You can care without clinging. You can act without obsessing. You can move through the world without demanding it bend to your will. The desire to fix everything often grows louder as the day ends. The quiet gives room for reflection. And sometimes that reflection fills with worry, regrets, replays. A voice that says, "If I had just done more," or "Tomorrow, I'll make it right." But Marcus would remind himself that this kind of mental noise only creates more weight. He chose to meet each day with what he could offer, and let that be enough. He didn't expect perfection, even from himself. He accepted that outcomes were never fully his to command. And so, rather than chasing the illusion of perfect resolution, he placed his attention on the state of his own soul. Was he acting with reason, with patience, with honesty? If so, that was peace. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Marcus knew how fleeting every situation is. The good, the bad, the unresolved, all of it turns. And because of that, he trusted that lasting peace couldn't come from waiting for everything outside to settle. That would mean depending on what's never stable. Instead, he returned again and again to what was always within reach. His own attitude, his own thoughts, his own ability to pause. To pause, not to disengage from life, but to allow the heart to soften, the breath to slow, and the mind to return to itself. That pause is where peace begins. If you've been trying to carry the day on your shoulders, it's all right to set it down now. You did enough. Even if some things feel unfinished, even if your thoughts haven't found neat conclusions, rest is still allowed. Rest is needed. The mind cannot think clearly if it is never given stillness. You don't have to solve everything before you sleep. In fact, most of what troubles you now cannot be solved by effort alone. It will soften on its own, in its time, if you let it. Peace is not a prize, waiting at the end of a completed to-do list. It's the space you give yourself in the middle of uncertainty. It's the choice to breathe slowly, even if your mind is still sorting things out. It's the permission to be human, unfinished, unsure, and still worthy of rest. Marcus trusted in nature's rhythm. He observed how the world moved without panic, how rivers flowed without rushing, how the stars stayed their course without seeking applause. He tried to shape his mind in the same way, steady, deliberate, free from the need to force what was beyond him. He wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. That power lives in you too. Peace comes from knowing this. You are not your problems. You are not the noise in your head. You are the space that notices it all, and the strength that chooses how to respond. You don't have to wait for a perfect moment. This one is enough. Whatever is unfinished can remain unfinished for now. Whatever is confusing can stay unsolved. What matters most is that you offer yourself a little ease, a little quiet, a little kindness. The world will continue. But tonight, you are allowed to pause. And in that pause, let the deep stillness of your own being rise to the surface. It has always been there, beneath the noise, beneath the plans, beneath the need to control. You are safe to rest. And from that rest, the clarity you've been chasing may come, not because you forced it, but because you finally allowed space for it to appear. Marcus Aurelius often looked to nature for guidance, not because it was perfect, but because it was steady. He saw the way the sun moved across the sky, never hurried, never delayed. The way the seasons shifted, each one arriving exactly when it should. He didn't just admire this rhythm, he trusted it. In the slow unfolding of the natural world, he found a reminder that rushing rarely leads to peace, and that some things can't be forced. Nature never rushes, and yet everything is accomplished. A tree doesn't strain to grow its leaves. A river doesn't force its flow. Even in storms, There's no panic, only movement. Marcus wrote about aligning ourselves with this rhythm. He believed that if we lived according to nature, we could let go of the frantic need to control, to hurry, to push everything forward all at once. Much of our suffering comes from impatience, from the idea that we should already be somewhere else, someone else, doing more, fixing more, understanding more. But Marcus reminds us, nature never tries to skip steps. It unfolds, moment by moment, guided by a quiet intelligence we can't always see, but can feel if we slow down enough. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. This moment, as it is, contains enough. There is no emergency in the turning of the earth, no alarm in the way day becomes night. You are part of that same rhythm, even if the world around you forgets. Even if people move quickly, talk loudly, demand answers faster than they can be lived, you don't have to join that rush. You can step aside and return to a gentler pace. Marcus believed that living well meant living in harmony with what is natural. That includes effort, yes, but not frantic, strained effort. Instead, it's the kind of action that moves with the current, not against it. When we force things, we often lose our footing. But when we work in rhythm with time, not against it, our path feels steadier. There are things you cannot speed up. Healing, understanding, trust, sleep. These are processes, not tasks. They unfold when given space, when left undisturbed, when allowed to move on their own timeline. Rushing them only adds tension, only delays their natural arrival. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Sometimes we confuse urgency with importance. We think the faster something happens, the more valuable it must be. But Marcus saw the opposite. He believed that what truly matters grows slowly. A good life, a strong character, inner peace. These are not rushed. They are nurtured quietly over time. He once wrote, "No great thing is created suddenly. A grape does not ripen in a moment. And neither do you. You are a work in progress, always becoming. And that becoming deserves patience. You may not be where you want to be yet. That's all right." Nature doesn't mind being in transition. A flower bud doesn't criticize itself for not blooming faster. It simply rests in its stage, trusting what comes next. Trust that you are growing in ways you cannot always see. Trust that the quiet parts of your journey, the still moments, the pauses, the slow mornings, are not wasted. They are part of the process. Necessary parts. The world around you may keep trying to speed things up. Quick answers. Quick results. But your mind and body were not built for endless urgency. You were made to breathe slowly, to move with care, to rest without guilt. Even Marcus, a man leading armies, managing a vast empire, facing wars and loss, still returned to this truth. Nature does not hurry, and yet it all gets done. Tonight you are allowed to stop chasing, stop calculating, let your breath slow down, let your thoughts stretch out, unhurried. You don't need to figure everything out before you sleep. You only need to allow yourself to be where you are. If your day was filled with rushing, let this be the hour that moves differently. Let it be quiet. Let it be slow. Let it remind you of the pace that is most natural, not the world's pace, but your own. Nature has never rushed, and yet the stars still rise, the trees still grow, the tides still turn. You are not behind, you are not late, you are exactly where you need to be. Let that be enough for now. Let it carry you gently toward rest. Marcus Aurelius believed that at the core of each person lies a stillness. Beneath the surface of worry, effort, noise, and distraction, the soul itself is quiet by nature. It is not stirred by every passing event. It is not anxious by default. Instead, it is calm, like a pool of clear water, undisturbed, until something breaks its surface. This is what Marcus returned to when life pressed in. The idea that within him, no matter what was happening outside, there was a center of silence that couldn't be shaken unless he allowed it. He wrote, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul." To him, the soul wasn't some distant or mystical thing. It was the part of you that is always watching, always present, always still. When thoughts spin too quickly, when emotions feel sharp and loud, it's not that the soul has changed. It's that the mind has drifted from that center, and coming back is always possible. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. Often, people believe they need to do something to feel peace, to accomplish, to fix, to achieve a state of clarity through effort. But Marcus reminded himself and others that stillness doesn't come from outside. It's not a reward for solving everything. It's something already within you, waiting, not needing to be built, only remembered. Noise, in his view, was mostly external. It came from opinions, from events, from the rush of others. But none of that could reach the part of you that chooses how to respond. That part can remain still even in the middle of noise, even in confusion, even in pain. Because silence isn't the absence of sound, it's the absence of reaction. Marcus wasn't asking himself to be cold or indifferent. Quite the opposite. He felt deeply, and yet believed that emotions could pass through without disturbing the whole self. Like wind brushing over the surface of water, noticed but not changing its depth. In the same way, your soul can observe without losing its balance. It can experience without becoming tangled. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. The modern world often encourages constant stimulation, endless streams of information, updates, tasks, conversations. It rewards being quick, being responsive, being available at all times. But Marcus saw something different. He saw that peace wasn't something others could hand to you. It was something you carried quietly and could access at any moment by stepping back. He believed that simplicity, focus, and silence were not luxuries, but needs. That without time to return inward, people become scattered. The soul becomes harder to hear beneath all the layers of pressure and performance. But with even a little space, even one breath taken slowly, you begin to hear it again. That steady, quiet voice, reminding you that you are more than what happens around you. In the evenings, when the body grows tired, that stillness comes more easily. The mind starts to soften. The demands fall away. It's in this softness that the truth Marcus spoke of becomes clearer. Your soul does not chase or clamor. It waits. And when the surface calms, it rises gently. You don't need to understand everything to feel this peace. You don't need to solve the day before sleeping. You don't need to prove anything tonight. That voice inside, the one that simply observes, calmly, with kindness, has been with you all along. It doesn't need fixing. It just needs room. Marcus understood that quiet wasn't weakness. In fact, he saw it as strength. The kind of strength that doesn't need to declare itself. That isn't shaken by praise or criticism. That knows its values and holds to them gently, not rigidly. This kind of strength comes from silence. Not the silence of avoidance, but the silence of knowing. If you feel restless, it's not a failure. It's a sign that you've been away from your center for a while. and it's all right to return. You can lie still and simply notice your breathing. You can let the day drop away, one thought at a time. You don't have to meet the world with energy right now. You can meet yourself with calm instead. The soul doesn't require noise to know what matters. It already knows. And Marcus believed that coming back to this truth each day, especially at the end of the day, was one of the most important things a person could do. You are not your tension. You are not your unfinished lists. You are not the roles you play or the things you carry. Underneath all of it, you are something still, something patient, something at peace. Let that be enough for tonight. Let it guide you inward, where the soul rests quietly, untouched, waiting to be felt again. Marcus Aurelius understood something that continues to weigh heavily on people today: the endless concern over what others think. Even in his time, as Emperor of Rome, surrounded by advisors, critics, strangers, and enemies, he reminded himself again and again, "Their thoughts are not mine." He wrote, "I have to go where nature leads me, and if others talk about me, they'll talk about me." In other words, he knew that opinions from the outside world didn't change the truth of who he was, or what he chose to do. It's easy to believe that your worth depends on what others see, or what they say. Approval feels like security. Disapproval feels like danger. But, in the stillness of reflection, Marcus saw that most judgments others make are fleeting. They're built on incomplete information, on bias, on their own troubles. And most of all, they pass. What someone believes about you today, they may forget tomorrow. So why carry the weight of it? When you lie down at night, there's a simple question to return to. Did I live according to my values? Not perfectly, not without mistakes, but with sincerity, with effort. That's what Marcus urged himself to measure, not the applause of the crowd, but the quiet honesty of his own soul. "It never ceases to amaze me," he wrote. "We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." He wasn't suggesting you should shut out others completely. He listened. He learned. But he refused to let the shifting winds of reputation pull him from what he knew was right. He recognized that peace came not from trying to shape how others see you, but from knowing that who you are, truly, is not up for them to define. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. When you think of how much energy goes into shaping your image, into worrying whether someone misunderstood, judged, or overlooked you, you begin to see just how much rest is taken from the mind by this concern. Marcus returned often to the idea that your work is your own, your choices are your own, your soul is your own. The rest, the reactions, the noise, the praise, the whispers, are not in your control, and therefore not your responsibility. This doesn't mean detachment in a cold or uncaring way. It simply means letting go of the illusion that you can control every impression, that you can be fully understood at all times, that your worth depends on whether others approve. It never did. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. There's a kind of rest that comes not from sleep alone, but from releasing the need to be seen in a certain way, from loosening the grip on your image, from allowing yourself to be misunderstood just for a moment, without needing to chase after explanation or defense. That kind of rest goes deeper. It clears the mind from inside. Marcus faced slander, betrayal, rumors, and politics, and yet his journals, written only for himself, return again and again to the same calming truth. Live with integrity, and let others speak as they will. Your peace does not depend on their words. It depends on your own alignment with what is good and what is honest. He often reminded himself that people speak from where they stand. A person's judgment says more about their state of mind than yours. So when someone criticizes or misunderstands you, it may have little to do with you at all. The wise response is not to fight back, but to stay anchored, to answer gently if needed, or to say nothing at all. You are not what others think. You are not the stories told about you. You are not the reaction to your presence. You are the presence itself. And that is something no one else can shape or define. This way of thinking takes time to settle in. But slowly, as the concern over every glance and opinion begins to fade, something else takes its place. Calm. The mind stops bracing, the body softens, the thoughts slow, because there is no more audience to perform for, only the self and the soul that already knows. Let yourself rest in that knowing. Let yourself be quiet in it. You don't need to explain tonight. You don't need to be seen clearly. You only need to be honest with yourself and kind. That is enough. Marcus taught that peace comes not from applause, not from admiration, not from a perfect reputation. Peace comes from within. It grows in the stillness where nothing needs proving. It strengthens when you choose to live simply, even if others don't notice. And it deepens when you learn, at last, to let go of what they might think. You are allowed to be misunderstood. You are allowed to be seen differently than you are. You are allowed to rest without defending your name. What matters most is how you meet yourself. And tonight, you can do that gently, with warmth, with truth, and with calm. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that he was just one small part of a much greater whole. He didn't see this as something diminishing, but something freeing. You are a soul carrying a corpse, he wrote, and you are a tiny part of the world. To him, this wasn't a reason to feel insignificant. It was a way to feel at peace. He understood that the burden of existence doesn't rest on any one person's shoulders, no matter how important they may seem in a moment. When he looked up at the stars or watched the natural rhythm of life unfold, he saw a world that was vast and moving on its own. It wasn't waiting for his decisions. It didn't bend to his moods. Nature didn't rush, didn't panic, and didn't ask anyone to control it. And within that, he found clarity. The self isn't the center of all things. The self is one thread in a much larger fabric, woven in quietly, with care, with purpose, but without the need to carry the whole design. There's something deeply restful about remembering this, that the world continues with or without our constant effort, that we are allowed to step back, to soften, to release the urgency of always needing to act, fix, or control. When Marcus described life, he often compared it to a flowing stream, a forest, a turning wheel, and each person just a part, a moment, a movement, not the whole. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. The body becomes tense when it feels everything depends on it. When the mind believes it must solve every problem or hold every answer. But nothing in nature does this. A tree doesn't try to grow all at once. A wave doesn't hold its form forever. They come and go and return again, and that's enough. Marcus encouraged himself to see the bigger pattern, especially when he felt overwhelmed or restless. Soon you will have forgotten all things, he wrote, and all things will have forgotten you. He didn't mean this in despair. He meant it as a comfort. The troubles that seem to fill your thoughts tonight are small against the canvas of the universe. The pain you carry won't echo forever, and even your name, someday, will fade from memory. But that's not a failure. That's the nature of things. And nature is not cruel. It is constant. It gives and receives, takes and lets go. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. When you accept that you are part of the whole and not its master, you allow yourself to rest. You stop chasing things that were never yours to hold. You stop resisting what you cannot change. And most of all, you stop measuring yourself against expectations that were never rooted in reality. Marcus wrote, "All that you see will soon perish, and those who see it will perish too." But he also believed in living rightly, even within this impermanence, because the point was never to last forever. The point was to live in harmony while you are here. Each breath you take is shared with every living thing. Each thought you release makes room for quiet. The ground doesn't ask you to earn your place on it. The night doesn't rush you through your worries. There is time to let go, and there is space to rest. You are not alone in this. The world is filled with people, each carrying their own invisible weight, each trying to be understood, to be good, to be at peace. But none of us are outside the current. We all drift, we all stumble, and still, we are held by the same sky. We move through the same seasons. We return again and again to the same truths. Marcus Aurelius didn't write to impress others. He wrote to center himself, to remember what mattered. And what mattered in the end was this: to live simply, to act justly, to let go of what lies beyond the self, and to rest in the knowledge that he was a part, not the whole. You are allowed to feel small. That isn't weakness, that's clarity. Because in feeling small, you make space. You return to the truth that you were never meant to carry everything, only your own thoughts, only your own actions, and even those can be held gently. Let your breath slow. Let your thoughts drift. Let the weight of the day fall away. You are part of something wider than you can see, and that means you are safe to rest. The world will not fall apart in your absence. It continues, as it always has, in its own rhythm, slow, steady, and whole. Let yourself be part of that rhythm. Let yourself belong to something greater than your worry, greater than your role, greater than the story you tell yourself when the lights go out. You are not all there is, and that is a deep, beautiful relief. Self-discipline, as Marcus Aurelius practiced it, wasn't about harshness or denial. It wasn't about punishing the body or silencing the heart. For him, discipline was clarity, the calm ability to choose what serves the soul over what simply pleases the moment. He believed that a good life came not from force or pressure, but from understanding what is truly within our control, and aligning ourselves gently with it. It's easy to confuse self-discipline with being hard on yourself, especially in moments of weakness, when things don't go as planned, or when exhaustion speaks louder than wisdom. But discipline, in its truest form, is not about withholding compassion. It's about honoring your deeper values, and doing so with steadiness, not severity. Marcus wrote, "Just that you do the right thing. The rest doesn't matter." He didn't say do the hardest thing or the most punishing thing. He said do the right thing, and let that be enough. To live with discipline is to live with purpose, not pressure. It means making decisions that reflect who you want to be, not who you're afraid you are. And that kind of living takes time. It takes softness. A tree doesn't grow by tearing itself apart. The sun doesn't rise by rushing upward. They move according to their nature, steady, consistent, and sure. Discipline isn't the voice that scolds you when you're tired. It's the quiet reminder that you still have the choice to return. That even if today was scattered, unfocused, messy, you are still allowed to try again tomorrow. That trying again is enough. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. When Marcus guided himself in his journal, he wasn't shouting. He was reminding, gently, firmly, patiently. He would tell himself, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. These weren't rules to punish himself with. They were anchors, a way to stay close to who he hoped to be, even in the middle of pressure, politics, or pain. His role as emperor was heavy, but his inner discipline helped him walk through it with less fear and more direction. Self-discipline doesn't mean perfection. It means consistency. It means showing up for your values, even when the mood is off. But that showing up can be gentle. It can be soft. It can be tired and quiet and still count. Just the act of remembering what matters is a discipline in itself. And when the day has ended and nothing went according to plan, real discipline whispers, rest, then return. It doesn't demand a self-blame ritual. It doesn't require you to stay awake reviewing every mistake. It allows you to pause, to recover, to reset, and to forgive. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. Self-discipline becomes a punishment only when it's disconnected from kindness, when it stops being about growth and starts becoming about control. Marcus didn't treat himself that way. He knew that human nature was fragile, fleeting, prone to mistakes, and he accepted that. When you wake up in the morning, he wrote, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. He didn't write this to judge them. He wrote it to remind himself to stay grounded, to remain kind, even when surrounded by chaos. And he gave himself permission to fail at that sometimes too. Discipline asks for your focus, not your shame. It's not something you beat yourself with. It's something you practice, like a gentle rhythm, returning again and again to what aligns with your values. If you've wandered off course today, you're not broken. You're human. And the path is still there. You are allowed to rest. And you are allowed to begin again, without guilt, without rush, without the belief that you should have already been perfect. That's not discipline. That's pressure. And pressure breaks people. But discipline, real, quiet, patient discipline, strengthens them over time. Let your breath soften. Let your thoughts grow lighter. You are not falling behind. There is nothing wrong with you. Your worth is not tied to your output. Your progress is not measured by harshness. It's measured by how gently you return to your values, even when it's hard. Marcus understood that rest and discipline were not opposites. They were partners. Rest restores your ability to live intentionally. It clears the fog, settles the nerves, gives space for insight. And without it, discipline becomes brittle. You can't build a steady life without steady moments. You can't grow strong by wearing yourself down. So tonight, allow yourself to soften, to breathe into the stillness. You don't have to push right now. You don't have to hold it all together. Your discipline will still be there in the morning, waiting, patient, not demanding. Just like you, it knows that good things don't need to be rushed. They just need to be returned to, calmly, again and again. This is how Marcus lived. This is how he endured, not through perfection, but through presence, not by punishing himself into virtue, but by choosing it one moment at a time and forgiving himself for the moments he didn't. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to be honest, and kind, and steady when you can be. That's enough. That's always been enough. Marcus Aurelius often returned to one simple truth. The present moment is all we ever truly possess. Everything else, the past, the future, what has been and what might be, exists only in the mind. The present, by contrast, it's quiet. It doesn't demand explanations or worry about consequences. It simply is, and it is there, always, waiting to be noticed. He wrote, "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present." This wasn't just advice to calm his mind during war or political strain. It was a reminder that peace is not something that comes later. It's something we can choose now, if we stop reaching for what isn't in front of us. Many people carry the weight of things long gone. They lie awake reviewing conversations, regretting decisions, trying to rewrite events that cannot be touched anymore. Or they reach forward, mentally drafting what tomorrow should look like, what they must fix or prove or prepare for. But the mind can't rest in two directions at once. It needs an anchor. And that anchor is this moment, this breath, this pause right here. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. The past may have shaped you, but it no longer defines what you do next. And the future, no matter how loudly it knocks, has no authority over your peace tonight. What matters is what you bring to this moment, your presence, your calm, your choice to simply be, without fixing or predicting. Marcus saw how often the mind runs loops around itself. He noticed how people exhaust themselves trying to control what they cannot. And so, in his journals, he gently reminded himself to come back to the task at hand, the breath in his lungs, the steps of his walk, the thoughts that served him here and now. Confine yourself to the present, he wrote, not to limit his mind, but to free it. There is strength in turning away from what-ifs. There is courage in saying, I don't need to solve that tonight. And there is wisdom in understanding that nothing outside this moment can be acted on. The moment you're in, this one, is the only one that asks anything of you. And it asks so little. Just your presence, just your willingness to let go of what isn't here. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. The mind may resist stillness. It's used to movement, to scanning for problems, to protecting itself with stories and plans. But none of that is needed here. Here, you are safe. Here, you are whole. Not because everything is perfect, but because nothing else matters right now. Not yesterday's mistake, not tomorrow's pressure, just now. This is where Marcus Aurelius found rest, not by resolving every conflict in his empire, but by coming back to his breath, his choices, his thoughts. He knew that a single good moment, lived with clarity, was worth more than hours of distraction. And he trusted that by being present now, he would be better prepared for whatever came next. Even in sleep, the present remains. It does not vanish. It softens. It welcomes. The body begins to release what it doesn't need. The mind loosens its grip. The world narrows to a quieter rhythm. And all the old thoughts, the ones that pushed and pulled, start to fade. This is not neglect. It is not giving up. It is allowing. And in allowing, you return to something true. There is nothing in this moment that demands fear. nothing that requires you to perform. You are not behind, you are not late, you are simply here. And that is enough. If you find your mind drifting to what was said, to what might be done, that's all right. Just notice and return. Return again and again to the only thing you ever really hold. Now. This breath. This stillness. This softness. Marcus once wrote, "Time is like a river of passing events, and strong is its current. You cannot grab the water that's already gone. You cannot control the shape of what flows ahead. But you can rest in the river. You can float. You can let go. There is no virtue in clinging to what you cannot change. There is no peace in chasing a future that isn't here yet. But there is calm in stillness. There is freedom in release. And there is real strength in being where your feet are, and nowhere else. So let this moment be enough. Let it hold you. Let it carry you gently into rest. The world will still turn tomorrow, and you will meet it when it arrives, not a second sooner. For now, let yourself be small. Let yourself be still. Let yourself simply be." Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that worth is not earned through constant motion. He understood that a person's value does not depend on endless achievement or recognition, but on the quiet strength of their character. In his journals, he would write as if speaking to himself, reassuring that simply being aligned with virtue and reason was enough. There was no need to chase approval or to measure himself against others. He knew that being still, truly still, with an honest and steady mind was not a failure, but a return to what is real. He believed that the world's noise often convinces people they must always be doing more to be worthy. More effort, more success, more proof of who they are. But Marcus saw through that illusion. He knew that a calm, thoughtful life held its own greatness, even if it went unnoticed. In stillness, he found clarity. In stillness, he remembered that who he was in essence, his choices, his thoughts, his kindness, mattered far more than the pace of his accomplishments. You don't need to hold so tightly anymore. There is nothing you must prove in this moment. The day may have been full of effort, or perhaps it was quieter than you hoped. Either way, your value hasn't changed. It doesn't depend on what you finished or left undone. It doesn't depend on how well the world sees you. Marcus believed that a person's worth is complete, even when they are resting, even when they are doing nothing but breathing and being. That quiet truth remains, even when you forget it. He saw the mind as a place that can so easily become restless. It seeks tasks to justify itself, accomplishments to measure its importance. But when you strip those things away, there is still something unshaken. The simple fact that you exist, that you are part of this vast, unfolding life. That is enough. Let the noise of the world fade for a while. You don't have to chase anything right now. Not goals, not approval, not understanding. Stillness doesn't make you less. It doesn't make you weak. It simply shows you what is always there beneath the rush. Your steady heart, your ability to choose calm, your quiet presence in a world that is often too loud. Marcus reminded himself that even emperors are just people. They eat, sleep, breathe, and age like everyone else. No amount of success or recognition changes that fundamental truth. So why spend life seeking endless validation? Why exhaust yourself trying to be seen a certain way when the greatest peace comes from being content with who you are in silence? The moments when you are still, when you're not performing, not striving, are the moments when you see yourself most clearly. You are not defined by your productivity. You are not the sum of your tasks. You are already enough, even now, as you rest and let your thoughts slow. Marcus found strength in this kind of self-acceptance. He wasn't asking himself to do less, but to stop confusing constant activity with true value. He knew that living well meant living intentionally, not endlessly. That it's better to do a few things with care than many things with exhaustion. You don't need to fill this silence. You don't need to make it meaningful or productive. The silence is already enough on its own, and you are enough within it. When the mind tries to argue, reminding you of all the things you could be doing, you can let those thoughts pass. They are just echoes of a world that measures worth by speed and success. Marcus believed that a wiser life is one that slows down enough to feel present, to breathe, to recognize the dignity of simply being alive. Right now, there is nothing missing. You don't need to be more than you are. You don't need to become something else before you can rest. You are allowed to let go of every expectation and simply exist, here and now. Let your breath grow softer. Let your thoughts drift without judgment. Let yourself remember that you are not a problem to be solved or a task to be completed. You are already whole. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Everything is a passing moment, but the nature of the good is always the same." Your goodness, your worth, does not depend on doing more or being more. It is in you already, unchanging, even as the world moves around you. So let yourself rest in that truth tonight. You don't have to chase what you already have. You don't have to prove anything to deserve peace. You are enough, especially in stillness.